Konoha, Year 52. A full year had passed since the Ninetales rampage. Though the scars it left behind were slow to fade, life within the village was steadily returning to its former vibrancy. "Madam, surely you don't want your child to suffer at the Ninja Academy, do you?" In the busy marketplace, outside a small dango stand. The shopkeeper, Saiba Miko, blinked in disbelief at the boy standing before her. He had black hair, dark eyes, and finely sculpted features, looking almost like a delicate porcelain doll. She couldn't fathom that such threatening words had come from someone so young. The woman forced an awkward smile. "Little one, if you don't have money today, it's all right. You can just bring it next time." And before she could finish, a chubby boy rushed out from the back room, crying and pleading with her not to take the money. Miko immediately understood, the child's threat was no bluff. In the end, coaxed by her son's urgent pleas, not only did she give the boy his dango for free, but she even threw in a few extra skewers. The boy grinned contentedly. "Auntie, you're pretty wise. Don't worry, I'll make sure your son stays safe at school. My name's Shimura Yami." With that, he waved and disappeared into the crowd, carrying his dango box. Miko stood frozen in place for a long moment before nervously looking down at her son, who sighed in relief. "Taro, has that boy been bothering you at the academy?" Saiba Taro shook his head weakly. "And no. Not really. But Shimura Yami is the grandson of the Hokage's chief advisor. Whoever crosses him, doesn't end well." Taro shivered, recalling the classmates who had once dared defy Yami and ended up so battered they missed classes for a week. It was terrifying. Not only were teachers reluctant to punish Yami, but they even praised his fighting prowess. If her son had gotten Yami angry today. Hokage's advisor? Miko was stunned. That was an extremely influential position. Shimura, no wonder. Even though she wasn't a ninja, Miko had heard enough about the Shimura clan's power and status. Shimura Yami, she silently engraved the name in her heart. For the sake of her son's safety and their family's peace, she resolved to never charge Yami a single ryo if he ever came to her shop again. Meanwhile. Ding. Congratulations. You have established a fear bond with Saiba Miko and Saiba Taro. Reward, Grand Mastery in Dango Crafting, and 0.1 Standard Genin Chakra. A mechanical voice echoed inside Shimura Yami's mind. Upon seeing the reward, the corners of his lips twitched slightly. This system was definitely strange. Shimura Yami was a transmigrator, someone who had reincarnated into this world, the world where the 5 great shinobi nations constantly clashed. The first thing he remembered after being born was seeing a woman give him a warm, gentle smile, before passing away right in front of him. His father had died heroically in battle while his mother was still pregnant. The standard tragic orphan backstory. But unlike others, he had something special, a grandfather named Shimura Danzo. In this world, almost every major villain had sympathizers. Uchiha Obito, the tragic romantic. Uchiha Madara, the iron-fisted conqueror. Even clan slayers and lone wolves had their defenders. But Shimura Danzo? No one defended him. Even fans who excused every other villain placed all the blame on him. The title name cage fit him perfectly. Honestly, when Yami first learned about his identity, he thought his future looked grim. But after a few days of mulling it over in his nanny's arms, he came to a different conclusion. Actually, it wasn't so bad. Compared to other transmigrators in the Naruto world, his starting point was quite favorable. After all, most young prodigies would eventually attract Danzo's attention sooner or later. But him? As long as he survived any assassination attempts from rival villages, his early life would be smooth sailing. By the time the 4th great shinobi war erupted, if he stayed clear of the battlefield, he could quietly enjoy life. Maybe even spend the rest of his days dreaming blissfully in the infinite Tsukuyomi. Consequences? None. As the main characters, Naruto and Sasuke wouldn't even consider blaming him for Danzo's actions. Once he understood this, Yami completely accepted his role as the Shimura clan's eldest heir. Konoha might have been under Sarutobi Hiruzen's rule, but reputation meant everything to him. Danzo, however, didn't care about appearances. He wasn't Hokage. Because of this, while Sarutobi Asuma was strictly brought up and often rebelled against his father, Yami lived lavishly as Konoha's #1 second-generation brat. Even the future mischief of Konohamaru wouldn't compare to the liberties he enjoyed. Naturally, being a transmigrator came with other perks. Since birth, Yami had a mysterious progress bar in his mind. And just 3 days ago, on his 6th birthday, his system officially activated. The strongest shinobi bond system. By forming bonds with others, he could extract traits and abilities as rewards. These included chakra natures, natural talents, chakra capacity, proficiency in jutsu. The strength of the bond and the individual determined the quality of the rewards. Like just now, by exchanging names and leaving an impression on Miko, he successfully earned a minor reward. If he deepened the bond, even better rewards would follow. However, seeing the Grand Master of Dango making skill just now, Yami instantly lost interest in building a deeper relationship with her. Young master, it's time for your training. A man in sunglasses with an almost unnoticeable presence appeared behind him, speaking softly. Despite the crowds, no one paid him any attention. This was Abarame Seiji, a root operative ranked Takubetsu Jonin, assigned as Yami's personal bodyguard. He also had a hidden partner, Yamanaka Ryo, whom Yami had never managed to spot even once. Coming. Yami lazily acknowledged him, then noticed another shop owned by a classmate's family. Using the same trick, he established 2 more bonds and walked away carrying a bag full of round fans. Basic round fan crafting mastery plus standard genin chakra plus 0.1. Feeling content, he left the busy marketplace behind and returned to the Shimura estate. Young Master Yami, today we'll be working on chakra extraction exercises. In the courtyard of a traditional wooden residence, Yami paid close attention as his instructor, Ebiki, outlined the principles and important aspects of chakra extraction. What exactly is a Takubetsu Jonin? They are shinobi whose skill level falls between Chunin and Jonin. Typically, Takubetsu Jonin are specialists promoted for their exceptional talent in a specific field rather than broad combat prowess. Ebiki was one such individual, having earned his rank through his excellence in teaching and training young ninjas. His knowledge and experience in chakra control and extraction far surpassed the average academy instructor. Even at this early stage, the difference between clan-born shinobi and civilians was already becoming clear. Even when given the same physical conditioning and mental reserves, children from powerful clans could extract chakra far more efficiently. They not only had deeper chakra pools but also faster recovery times compared to ordinary ninjas. Meanwhile, civilian-born shinobi often had to rely on strategy and intellect to bridge the gap. If they wanted to get stronger, they had to find good teachers, but most of the best instructors were kept within powerful clans. Over time, this naturally created factions among the shinobi world. Although Yami possessed both a system that gave him advantages and strong family backing, he never slacked in his efforts. If anything, he pushed himself harder than most. Because at the end of the day, this was a world where strength ruled everything. Without power, any respect shown to you would either be empty, or based on fear. In his previous life, he had been nothing special, just an average person. Now, with real opportunities and resources at his fingertips, he wasn't going to waste them. Still, real training had only started after he turned 5. Chakra, after all, was created by mixing physical energy from cells with mental energy. Pushing the body too early could cause irreversible harm. Sometimes, restraint was the smarter path. The 2-hour lesson flew by. After a formal bow to show respect, Ebiki excused himself. He was very pleased with Yami as a student. Not only because Yami was the grandson of Shimura Danzo, one of the most powerful and influential men in Konoha, but also because Yami himself was quick-witted and serious about learning. Unlike many children who needed constant emotional support and encouragement, teaching Yami was refreshingly straightforward. Later, Yami returned to his private quarters. A servant soon arrived with his dinner and a carefully prepared herbal tonic to nourish his body. Frowning slightly at the bitter smell, Yami swallowed the medicine in one go before starting on his food. From a biological standpoint, every human body had a limited number of cell divisions in its lifetime. Using chakra in battle essentially accelerated that countdown. However, even without chakra usage, the body would age naturally. Death usually came from organ failure, not reaching the limit of cell division. As long as chakra was used in moderation and the body was properly maintained, shinobi could still enjoy long lives. This was something his grandfather, Shimura Danzo, had personally taught him. Despite his advanced age, Danzo's ambition hadn't diminished. He still harbored dreams of becoming Hokage, and thus, he was obsessed with health preservation. In another context, it would have been an inspiring story about an old warrior chasing his dreams. But reality was rarely so kind. After dinner, Yami headed back to his room. His grandfather hadn't been seen in days. Whatever the old man was scheming, he was keeping it to himself. Aside from a few attendants and guards, Yami was the sole occupant of the enormous Shimura estate. Lying down on his bed, he summoned the system's interface with a single thought and opened his personal status page. Status interface. Name, Shimura Yami. Gender, male. Age, 6 years old. Birthday, April 1st, year 46, Konoha calendar. Chakra affinities, fire, genius, wind, genius, yang, excellent. Total chakra reserves, 6.1 standard genin units. Chakra control skill, genius. Learned jutsu, 3 basic techniques, proficient, wind release, great breakthrough, normal, fire release, great fireball, normal. Nature transformations, none yet. Special traits, father's hopes, mother's blessing, senja bloodline, weak, developing, swordsmanship talent, stealth expertise, dango crafting, fan-making talent. Strength evaluation, the king of the playground. You're the one picking fights and winning. For someone blessed with a cheat-like system, this didn't seem like anything special. However, considering he had only activated the system a few days ago and apart from the bonus genin level chakra the system had provided, everything else came from his own hard work. His progress was impressive. For a 6-year-old, he was already above the average academy graduate. The system broke down talents and jutsu mastery like this. Talent grades: ordinary rightward arrow, good rightward arrow, excellent rightward arrow, genius rightward arrow, supreme rightward arrow, limitless. Jutsu mastery levels: beginner rightward arrow, normal rightward arrow, proficient rightward arrow, mastered rightward arrow, supreme rightward arrow, limitless. Having a genius rating put him on the same level as the young prodigy Heitake Kakashi. Supreme talent was reserved for the likes of Sarutobi Hiruzen, the legendary professor of Konoha. Looking at it realistically, Yami's current maximum potential hovered around the level of an elite jonin. If he worked extremely hard, he might barely reach cage level strength. But then, his gaze settled on the first 2 special traits in his profile. And he froze. Father's hopes. Your late father, whom you never met, had placed great hopes on your shoulders. Effect: all innate attribute talents are boosted by 1 grade. Mother's blessing. A mother's love transcends life itself. Before her death, she bestowed her final blessing upon you. This ability has 3 stages. Stage 1, unlocks the latent senja bloodline through maturation, effect ends at adulthood. Stage 2, after formally becoming a shinobi, all talents receive another grade boost, some limits can be surpassed, certain traits exempt. Stage 3, upon reaching 16 years of age, your chakra pool will permanently double. Parental love. Yami thought back to the soft, kind woman he had seen only once in vague memories. His emotions were tangled and difficult to describe. He knew his mother hailed from the Senja clan. Decades ago, Senja Tobirama had promoted marriages between Senja members and civilians or other clans to strengthen ties and encourage the rise of gifted civilians. However, awakening the Senja bloodline wasn't something that just happened easily. His mother had given him the most precious gift she could. It was a starter bonus that even his system hadn't provided. The following day. Since it was a day off, Yami allowed himself to sleep in, not waking until around noon. Ebiki wouldn't be visiting today, but that didn't mean Yami intended to waste time. Heading into the village to meet new people would be inefficient, staying home to train was a better use of his energy. The system required 3 conditions for forging bonds. A face-to-face meeting. Knowing each other's names. Leaving a deep, lasting impression. So far, only the gifts from his parents had been exceptions to these rules. To most adults, Yami was just another kid easy to overlook. Meeting the 3rd condition was still a real challenge. Otherwise, his 2 assigned bodyguards, Abarame Seiji and Yamanaka Ryo, would have already formed bonds with him. To them, Yami was just a mission, not someone important. At the moment, the most reliable place to earn rewards was still the Ninja Academy. For instance, he had received his fire release affinity from a classmate. With a bit of luck, he could one day collect all 5 chakra natures or even the elusive yin release. Yami stepped into the courtyard, picked up a small dagger crafted just for him, and started practicing basic slashes. In this world, there wasn't a strict distinction between swords and knives. To Yami, they were all just blades, even the legendary Kusanagi sword was simply another knife in his eyes. Still, he wasn't one to nitpick over labels when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Given his sword talent, he was confident he could reach the highest level once he became a genin. It would be a waste not to train hard. No matter how strong a shinobi was, they were still flesh and blood. A blade could kill just as effectively as any jutsu, sometimes even more. Most ninjas didn't know dozens of jutsu, instead, they relied on taijutsu and tools to survive. Jutsu were meant to create openings or secure an instant victory. Not everyone could just toss around raise-nons like casual attacks. Whoosh. Whoosh. The sound of his blade slicing through the air echoed around the courtyard. Sunlight gleamed off the sweat collecting on Yami's forehead. He continued training without pause, even after lunch, not stopping until sunset when a deep voice called out behind him. Yami. Turning, Yami saw a tall, weathered old man standing there. A bandage covered his left eye, and he carried a heavy, oppressive presence. Yet, when he looked at Yami, he smiled stiffly, clearly not used to smiling at all. Shimura Danzo. The darkness lurking behind Konoha's light. The unofficial 5.5th Hokage. The strongest Nabekage in history. Hey, old man. You're back, Yami greeted casually. Ever since he learned to speak, he had always called Danzo old man, never grandfather. Danzo didn't mind, or maybe he just accepted it. Toward outsiders, he was ruthless and calculating. But Yami was family. His only surviving blood relative. And the foundation of his ambitions. Danzo wanted Yami to succeed him, not only to inherit root, but to one day ascend as Hokage. Judging by Yami's current growth, Danzo had no reason to be disappointed. His progress was on par with Kakashi's back in the day, reaching near graduation standards shortly after enrolling at the academy. If only. Yami had a Kekki-eye Genkai. Danzo's one visible eye darkened slightly. No matter how exceptional a normal shinobi was, there were still limits. Only a power like Sharingan or Wood Release could help Yami, and by extension, Danzo break past them. As these thoughts crossed his mind, two notifications from the system echoed in Yami's head. Bond formed with Shimura Danzo. Reward, Wind Release Affinity, Genius, Dot. Bond with Shimura Danzo upgraded to Stage 2. Reward, Wind Release Nature Transformation, Mastery, Dot. It was the first time Yami had met Danzo after the system's activation, so it made sense that the rewards triggered now. The two rewards blended together, subtly altering Yami's aura, making it sharper and more dangerous. Especially the Wind Release Nature Transformation. Danzo was one of Konoha's top wind release experts, even on a world scale. After all, not just anyone could cut through a Susanoo with a wind-infused shuriken. Danzo immediately noticed the shift in Yami's aura and snapped out of his thoughts. He stepped fully into the training grounds. I have some free time today. It's been a while since I checked your progress. Show me what you've got. Huh? Oh, sure. Yami tightened his grip on the dagger and charged forward without hesitation. A thin current of compressed air whirled around his blade. Danzo's lone eye brightened. Already grasped nature transformation? Excellent. Mastering nature transformation at 6 years old? His grandson truly had the potential to become Hokage. In a flash, Yami closed the distance, swinging his blade down hard. Danzo easily leaned aside, dodging the attack. Yami instantly followed up with a spinning kick. Danzo blocked with his arm, using the force to push Yami back. But before he could reset, Yami had already closed the gap again. Of course, Danzo was a seasoned elite jonin at the very least. Yami stood no real chance against him. But Yami didn't hold back. He gave everything he had, swordsmanship, ninjutsu, and sheer effort. Because the one person least likely to harm him in this world was Danzo. 15 minutes later. Yami finally stopped, panting heavily, his chakra reserves close to empty. Danzo, in contrast, hadn't even broken a sweat. Impressive, Yami. But don't get arrogant. Talent alone doesn't make you invincible. Danzo's stiff smile finally softened into a genuine one. Yami's progress had far surpassed his expectations. His wind release skills were already incredibly refined, and his fire release techniques were also top-notch for his age. If only he had the right eyes. If that happened, the future of Konoha would belong to the Shimura clan. Satisfied with the day's results, Danzo led Yami back inside. During dinner, halfway through the meal, Yami suddenly looked up and asked, "Old man, you looked pretty mad when you got back. Who ticked you off?" Danzo casually scooped up a bite of rice. "Who else? That old geezer Sarutobi Hiruzen. Tried to take him out today but failed again. Guess my Hokage plans will have to wait." Yami. After hearing Danzo's explanation, Yami finally grasped the situation. It turned out that Danzo had vanished for a time because he had been secretly plotting to assassinate the Hokage. Following the Ninetales attack, the youngest and brightest fourth Hokage, Namikaze Minato, had perished. The third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, had once again stepped up to lead Konoha and had shown no intent to name a successor. According to protocol, a Hokage must gain approval from the daimyo through an official ceremony. However, because Konoha was left in ruins after the attack, Sarutobi Hiruzen had postponed his trip to the Land of Fire's capital. Only recently had he begun preparations for the journey. Danzo, having learned of this early on, had mobilized all of Root to carry out an assassination against Hiruzen. The good news, the assassination succeeded. The bad news, the Hokage they killed was just a decoy. The real Sarutobi Hiruzen had already anticipated Danzo's move. Just as Danzo was relishing his so-called victory on the Hokage's seat, the real Hiruzen appeared and shattered his delusion. While Hiruzen didn't punish him outright, his composed and superior attitude left a deep scar on Danzo's pride. To make matters worse, Danzo had finally found a shinobi gifted with wood release only for Hiruzen to poach him away. Even recalling it now made Danzo inwardly seethe. His anger was so intense he even cursed Sarutobi Biwako, who had long since passed away. Yami could only feel speechless. "Old man, don't push it. If anyone else had tried to assassinate the Hokage, they'd have been executed immediately. Hiruzen's already being generous by not stripping you of Root's leadership. Does he even have that right?" Danzo sneered, his face twisted with cold arrogance. "Root falls under Umbu, but it's not under his direct control. Even if I were officially dismissed, my forces would remain loyal to me. This is what it means to raise true tools." "Then try not to get yourself killed," Yami said with a scoff. "I'm still stuck at the Ninja Academy, and that's his turf. He won't dare touch you." Danzo's voice was absolute. "It's just an assassination attempt. It's not even the first time over these decades. When Hiruzen first became Hokage, I tried to assassinate him. Later, I went after the fourth Hokage too. What kind of insane relationship was that?" Listening to his grandfather casually recount such great achievements, Yami didn't even know what kind of expression he should make. The bonds between these old men were seriously terrifying. For ordinary people, an attempt on the Hokage's life would mean immediate execution. But to Danzo, it seemed like just another way to deepen a friendship with Hiruzen. Forget it. Yami had no intention of getting tangled up in their ancient grudges. As long as it didn't affect him, he couldn't care less. After dinner, Yami returned to his room to refine his chakra, while Danzo headed back to Root's base. Tapping his cane lightly on the ground, two Root operatives in masks appeared behind him, kneeling silently. Danzo stood quietly for a few seconds, deep in thought, then issued his orders coldly. "Collect all swordsmanship techniques, from Konoha and outside villages. Organize and compile them. Also, have our agents in Kirigakure see if they can obtain one of the 7 ninja swordsman's blades." "Understood." One ninja answered and vanished swiftly. Danzo turned to the remaining subordinate. "What's Orochimaru's situation?" "Orochimaru entered his lab 2 weeks ago and hasn't been seen since. Either that, or our surveillance wasn't enough to track him." Danzo grunted in dissatisfaction but didn't blame the subordinate. Expecting anyone to keep tabs on Orochimaru was foolish. He was the most elusive of the 3 Sunin, and after the others had left the village, his nature had shifted even further. Currently, they maintained a fragile cooperation, but Danzo had already decided, once he had extracted all the value from Orochimaru, he would expose his experiments and force him into exile. After all, human experimentation on Konoha's citizens, not even Hiruzen could cover that up forever. But for now, there was still value to be squeezed. Since Yami had shown a natural talent for swordsmanship, it was only right for his grandfather to prepare the best foundation possible. Yet swordsmanship alone wasn't enough, he needed a legendary blade to match it. The first ideal option was the Sword of the Thunder God, once used by Senju Tobirama. Unfortunately, that was in Hiruzen's hands now, making it difficult to obtain. The next possibility was Orochimaru's Kusanagi sword. The Kusanagi wasn't just a single weapon, it referred to an entire class of legendary blades. And rumor had it that Orochimaru possessed several. Danzo'S interest was piqued. "Let's move," he said as he slowly walked out of Root's base. His pace was steady but slow, very much the gait of an aging veteran. "Set up a meeting with Orochimaru. I still owe Yami a 6th birthday present." Time flew by, and soon it was another day at the Ninja Academy. Carrying his backpack, Yami made his way toward the school. The Shimura clan compound was located on the outskirts of Konoha's center, and along the way, many clan members greeted him respectfully. As Yami nodded in return, system notifications appeared before him. 0.1 Standard Chunin Chakra. 0.2 Standard Chunin Chakra. The system's power was becoming increasingly clear. 1 Standard Chunin Chakra unit was roughly equivalent to the chakra reserves of 10 regular genin. By the time he left the clan grounds, his total chakra had accumulated to 1.3 Standard Chunin units. In addition, he had gathered a few more wind release talents. The system allowed him to fuse talents, but for now, the quality and quantity were too low to upgrade to an ultimate wind release. Still, his affinity was undeniably improving. When Yami arrived at the academy, several students caught sight of him and immediately paled. Fear was written all over their faces. Some even looked like they were about to cry. Yami didn't pay them any mind. He casually entered the classroom and settled into his usual seat by the window. These were the same brats who once jeered at him for being an orphan, mocking the fact that no one came to pick him up after school. In response, Yami had beaten them half to death. It had taken them over a week to recover and return. Was that enough to settle the score? Of course not. If their parents were shinobi, they wouldn't live past this year. Konoha's ongoing conflicts would ensure they died gloriously in battle. Then they would finally understand the loneliness of an orphan firsthand. And if their parents weren't ninja? Well, those were even easier to deal with. As Yami lazily watched a sparrow land on a nearby tree branch, a cheerful voice called out, "Yami!" A lively girl with flowing black hair burst into the classroom. The moment she spotted him, her face lit up, and she quickly rushed over to sit beside him. Yami smiled warmly and ruffled her hair. "Izumi." Uchiha Izumi, a girl who truly embodied the meaning of her name. Her personality was as soft as a spring breeze, her voice gentle like flowing water. She had long, silky black hair and a small teardrop-shaped mole near the corner of her eye. One day, without a doubt, she would blossom into a rare beauty. She was also Yami's childhood companion, someone he had met just a year earlier. Yami had witnessed the Ninetales attack with his own eyes. The enormous fox, towering like a mountain, had wreaked havoc outside the village walls, leaving devastation behind. At the time, several guards had hurried Yami into an underground shelter, where he stumbled upon a terrified Uchiha Izumi. Instinctively, he had stopped the panicked little girl with black hair from rushing off alone. Originally, Yami had only possessed a wind affinity and a dormant yang attribute. His current fire affinity came from Izumi. "Yami." Izumi's cheeks were pink, her voice carrying a hint of complaint. "Why didn't you come to see me during the break?" "I was busy training, Izumi." Yami sighed dramatically, then turned his gaze to another figure who had entered the room alongside her. "After all, with a genius like Uchiha Itachi in our class, I have to work harder. I can't disgrace the Shimura clan." The person accompanying Izumi was none other than Uchiha Itachi, the shinobi world's ultimate example of filial piety. There were many orphans among shinobi, but Uchiha Itachi was notable for actively creating that fate for himself. Yami had to admire the commitment. "You're a genius too, Yami." Izumi quickly reassured him, her voice full of earnestness. She wasn't wrong. Before Itachi awakened his Sharingan, Yami might have even been stronger than him. But once those eyes opened, Itachi had transformed into a monster, soaring to near cage level in just a few short years. Itachi frowned slightly. He could always feel a certain hostility from Shimura Yami. Distrust of the Uchiha was common after the Nine-Tails attack. Many villagers had seen the Sharingan reflected in the beast's eyes. But Yami's disdain seemed aimed specifically at Itachi, not the clan as a whole. Otherwise, he wouldn't get along so well with Izumi. You're not weaker than me, Shimura. Let's both keep working hard to serve the village, Itachi said politely before continuing on his way. Yami watched his retreating back, unsure whether it was really him or just a clone. A part of him was tempted to check. What are you staring at, Yami? Izumi asked, tilting her head. Nothing. Yami smiled and turned back to her. Since I missed seeing you last weekend, how about we go fishing next week? Izumi's eyes lit up with excitement, instantly forgetting her earlier worries. Where should we go? How about the river at Training Ground 35? It's beautiful there. I'll leave the choice to you, Yami replied with a grin. Danzo hadn't been thrilled about Yami's closeness with Izumi. They had even argued about it once. But since Yami insisted, Danzo hadn't used any dirty tricks to interfere. Maybe he saw Izumi as just another insignificant Uchiha, harmless and unimportant in the grand scheme of things. Even so, Danzo never missed a chance to preach about the Uchiha being inherently dangerous. Yami had long since grown numb to it. Before long, the school bell rang, and their instructor, Kazuma Shuaki, entered the classroom. All right, everyone. Today we're learning the basics of throwing ninja tools. Kazuma Shuaki didn't waste time on hollow speeches or brainwashing. Unlike in the future when the academy would churn out endless propaganda about the third Hokage's unmatched strength, this was still an era shaped by war. Minato Namikaze's rise to Hokage in Konoha Year 50 had only put a lid on major battles, not ended conflict altogether. The other villages, apart from Sunagakure, which had been thoroughly beaten, continued low-level fighting. Skirmishes were constant, and the shinobi world stayed locked in tension. Instructors trained students to fight and survive, not to parrot slogans. Kazuma Shuaki quickly filled the blackboard with diagrams, explaining the curves and angles of shuriken throws along with different techniques. The first session was all theory. The second was hands-on practice, also led by Shuaki. The students headed outside to the training field. Since there weren't enough practice targets, everyone paired up. Yami naturally teamed up with Izumi. Itachi was randomly matched with another student. He casually picked up 3 shuriken and flicked them forward. Clang. The weapons collided midair, ricocheted off each other, and embedded themselves neatly in the bullseye. A murmur of awe spread through the group. Wow. He hit all 3. As expected of an Uchiha. He's amazing. Itachi is so cool. Should I pick him or Yami? You? Please. You've been stuffing your face with candy. Get real. Izumi ignored the noise, focusing on her throws. She didn't show off like Itachi, but every one of her shuriken landed cleanly within the red circle. Nice job, Izumi. Yami praised her sincerely. The little girl smiled brightly and stepped aside. You're even better, Yami. That's right. Watch carefully. Yami smirked as he pulled a shuriken from his pouch. Their instructor, Kazuma Shuaki, subtly turned his focus toward him. Shimura, Yami and Uchiha Itachi were the brightest stars in the class, both heirs to powerful bloodlines. Itachi had already impressed everyone. Now it was Yami's turn. A second later. Boom. Several targets exploded in a burst of smoke and splinters, making the students shriek and scramble back. Kazuma Shuaki's eyes nearly popped out of his head. Why was there an explosive tag on your shuriken? He had seen it clearly. Yami's throw had only nicked the target, but the attached explosive tag had detonated, wiping out several targets nearby. Yami remained perfectly calm. It widens the margin of error. Even if I miss, the explosion still gets the job done. He turned to Shuaki with a straight face. So? Did I hit it or not? Kazuma Shuaki. Shimura, the point of shuriken practice is to improve your aim. Adding explosive tags defeats the whole purpose, don't you think? Despite knowing Yami came from a complicated background, Kazuma Shuaki couldn't stop himself from reprimanding him. An explosive tag cost around 300 ryo, and during times of war, prices soared because resources became scarce. 300 ryo could buy 3 hearty bowls of Ichiraku ramen, not exactly a trivial expense. Most shinobi only carried a few hundred ryo on missions. If every shuriken was tagged with explosives, the cost would far outweigh the mission rewards. Yami just waved his hand lazily. Sensei, as long as I hit my target, does it really matter how I do it? It's just a few tags. I can afford tens of thousands. Kazuma Shuiki was momentarily lost for words. Bond formed with Kazuma Shuiki, rich kid reward, Earth release chakra, good, dot. Bond of fear established with classmate A reward, 0.1 standard genin chakra. Bond of speechlessness created with classmate B reward, swordsmanship aptitude, normal, dot. System messages popped up one after another, and Yami smirked in satisfaction. Of course, his shuriken skills were already top-notch. It was one of his standout abilities. But if he wanted to grow stronger and leave a lasting impression, he had to act unpredictably. At this point, he had nearly completed all the early-stage Bond achievements in his class. All but one. Yami's eyes flicked toward Itake, whose face remained stoic, and his smile grew. As expected of Itake, the boy who pondered life's meaning at the age of 4. His emotions were incredibly well guarded. Before long, the school day ended. Yami, Izumi, and Itake exited the academy together. At Izumi's invitation, Yami was heading to her house for dinner. Izumi and Yami chatted happily as they walked, completely ignoring the silent Itake trailing behind them. Yami was well aware of Itake's complicated family situation. Izumi's father, a foreign shinobi who had married into the Uchiha clan, had lost his life defending the village during the Nine-Tails assault. Her mother was just a regular Uchiha with only Chunin-level skills. She hadn't even awakened the Sharingan. Clans like the Uchiha and Hyuga valued bloodline purity, often encouraging internal marriages to preserve it. If not for her father marrying into the clan, Izumi wouldn't even have had the chance to exist. Even so, her family faced constant exclusion from other Uchihas. Stop right there. Outsiders aren't allowed past this point. 2 Uchiha guards stood rigidly at the entrance, blocking their way with arrogance practically radiating off them. The Uchiha's poor reputation wasn't only because of the village's politics, their own behavior fueled it too. They treated non-Uchiha like dirt. Who would like people like that? Senpai, Yami is my guest, Izumi quickly explained, but the guards shook their heads without a hint of sympathy. Rules are rules. He can't come in. You can go in alone. Yami laughed casually. You'd think the Uchiha owned Konoha, the way you act. I can walk straight into the Hokage's office anytime. Are you planning to secede? The guards' faces darkened instantly, and even Itake's usually blank expression shifted slightly. Before anyone could reply, a deep and commanding voice sounded. Surely you jest. The Uchiha are loyal members of Konoha, and we welcome our friends. The guards spun around, paling when they saw who had spoken. They quickly bowed their heads. Clan head Fugaku. Father, Itake greeted quietly. Fugaku merely nodded at his son before turning his warm gaze to Yami and Izumi. You must be Shimura Yami. Itake often talks about you. Welcome to our clan. Really? Yami tilted his head innocently. Then why were those 2 uncles so rude? They misunderstood the situation, Fugaku explained smoothly. The guards are tasked with identifying possible intruders, not to drive away friends. TCH. Yami clicked his tongue. No point in having guards who can't follow simple orders. Maybe I should ask my grandfather to train them for a few days. He's very good at fixing discipline issues. Fugaku's smile froze for a brief second. Danzo training them? They might not survive. No need to trouble Lord Danzo. I'll handle their retraining personally, Fugaku said hurriedly, casting a sharp glare at the 2 guards. His Sharingan nearly activated out of sheer frustration. Ding. Host establishes a hostile bond with Uchiha Hero reward, Yin release chakra, good, dot. Host establishes a hostile bond with Uchiha Takashi reward, Yin release chakra, good, dot. Host establishes a bond with Uchiha Fugaku reward, Yin release chakra, genius, dot. Host establishes a bond with Uchiha Itake reward, special talent, 1 vs 7 combat prowess. Yami's muscles tensed as a wave of system notifications hit him. He quickly told the system to hold off on merging the new rewards, keeping a calm facade as he smiled at Fugaku. Then his gaze shifted to Itake, his eyes glinting with interest. A golden opportunity. If Kakashi was known as 50-50, evenly matched with almost anyone. Then Uchiha Itachi was the exact opposite. Against weaklings, he obliterated them instantly. Against stronger opponents, he relied on his main Jikyo Sharingan and brilliant strategy to pull off miracles or even win. Sure, his main Jikyo helped, but his pure combat instincts were terrifying. Sasuke wrecked his eyes after only a couple of days with the main Jikyo. Meanwhile, Itachi endured for years without falling apart. That said everything. Even if Yami wasn't fond of Itachi's dutiful son act, he had to respect it. Uchiha Itachi, like Namikaze Minato, stood at the summit of cage-level power. After watching the two children leave, the smile on Fugaku's face slowly disappeared, replaced by a cold, imposing look as he turned to the two guards nearby. Starting next week, your shifts will be doubled. Pass the word along. Shimura must be allowed entry at any time. The two Uchiha guards stiffened but quickly bowed in acknowledgement before returning to their duties. Fugaku then led his son back home, advising him as they walked. Itachi, make sure you develop a good relationship with Shimura at the academy. His support will be vital in easing tensions between our clan and the village leadership. Although Itachi was only 6, he possessed a maturity far beyond his years, and Fugaku always treated him accordingly. Understood, father, Itachi answered respectfully, fully grasping the importance of his father's instruction. Satisfied with his son's response, Fugaku allowed a brief smile to cross his lips. But his face soon hardened once more. There was little reason to feel truly at ease. The Uchiha's isolation within the village was only worsening, and their every move was being monitored by the village authorities. Fugaku wasn't certain if this was solely Danzo'S doing or if Hiruzen was also behind it, but either way, he had no choice but to endure it for now. His deepest resentment, however, was reserved for the masked figure who had unleashed the Nine Tails. Had it not been for that attack, the Uchiha would never have been pushed so far to the margins. And the fourth Hokage might still be alive. Namikaze Minato had been extraordinarily gifted, but more than that, he had been a bright, genuine leader unlike the scheming, manipulative elders like Hiruzen and Danzo. Most importantly, Minato bore no prejudice against the Uchiha. He had even chosen an Uchiha as one of his personal students. But now, he was gone. During Minato's brief time as Hokage, the relationship between the village and the Uchiha had shown signs of improvement, giving Fugaku hope that reconciliation was possible. That hope was crushed overnight, and the situation only deteriorated further in the aftermath. Now, Fugaku not only had to manage the distrust of Hiruzen, Danzo, and the other village elders, but also the growing dissatisfaction and militancy within his own clan, a delicate and dangerous balancing act. Still, the sudden appearance of Yami, and his budding friendship with Izumi, offered Fugaku a sliver of opportunity. Danzo had no living relatives other than Yami. If Fugaku could use this connection to extend the Uchiha's goodwill toward Danzo. Thinking along those lines, Fugaku glanced at Itachi, new hopes forming in his mind. Meanwhile, Yami, who was strolling along with Izumi, was completely unaware that Fugaku had begun to set his sights on him. He simply thought Fugaku's earlier kindness was a formality, meant to maintain appearances for Danzo's sake. Even if he had known, he wouldn't have cared, he would have laughed it off. At this point, nobody could truly mend the rift between Konoha and the Uchiha. The only one who might have managed it, Minato, was already dead. The seeds of resentment had been sown long ago, during the reign of Senju Tobirama. His students, now the village elders, had inherited his deep distrust of the Uchiha. Even if Yami was Danzo's grandson, it would not change the outcome. Even Danzo himself could not bridge that divide. Though Hiruzen wore the mask of a pacifist, he feared the Uchiha more than anyone. An independent, powerful clan within the village was a threat to any leader who could not fully control it. And the other elders, Koharu and Homura, Tobirama's disciples, were no different, viewing the Uchiha with thinly veiled suspicion. None of Konoha's high command truly trusted the Uchiha. At the same time, the Uchiha themselves were far from blameless. Years of running the Konoha military police had nurtured a sense of arrogance among them, making compromise nearly impossible. Fugaku was a capable head of the clan, but without overwhelming power or the willingness to act ruthlessly, what could he truly accomplish? All he could do was wait and hope that his carefully groomed, dutiful son would one day change the clan's fate. Izumi, Yami, dinner's ready, a warm, gentle voice called from outside the room. The two children shared a smile, set aside their pens, and hurried out. Uchiha Kiyomi, Izumi's mother, was a naturally kind-hearted woman. It was no surprise she had raised a thoughtful and well-mannered daughter like Izumi. As they arrived at the dining area, Kiyomi gently reminded them to wash up, while she set out a simple but delicious meal: grilled fish, sushi, and 3 bowls of miso soup. When Yami returned from cleaning his hands, Kiyomi greeted him with a kind smile. "I didn't know you'd be joining us today, so I just made a few simple dishes," she said warmly. "Not at all. It smells amazing, I'm starving," Yami said brightly, flashing a wide, innocent grin. As expected, Kiyomi's smile softened even more. Mischievous kids could be exhausting, but polite and cheerful ones were always welcome. "Then eat up. You're at the perfect age for growing," she said kindly, sliding a plate of crispy fish his way. In truth, Kiyomi felt deeply grateful toward Yami. Not only had he helped Izumi cope with the loss of her father, but he had continued to look after her ever since, helping her heal bit by bit. "I want to grow taller too," Izumi chimed in with enthusiasm, clasping her hands together. The two children exchanged an amused glance and laughed softly. There was something truly heartwarming about such a pure, cheerful little girl. Yami felt especially content. Today had been a fruitful day. Not only had he gained some advantage with Itachi, but Kiyomi had given him an unexpected bonus as well. Host has formed a bond with Uchiha Kiyomi. My son-in-law becomes more charming over time. Reward, mother-in-law's blessing. Mother-in-law's blessing. When the host and Uchiha Izumi are within a 500-meter radius, both of their training speeds are increased by 100%. A training enhancement. Its value was almost comparable to possessing Uchiha bloodline talents. And the best part? It applied to all kinds of training: ninjutsu, taijutsu, chakra control, everything. Clearly, it was time to start seriously considering how to win Izumi over for good. Yami's mind raced with possibilities. Of course, it wasn't just about Izumi's willingness. Danzo would also be a major hurdle. He would need a carefully thought-out plan. By the time they finished eating, night had fully fallen. Yami stayed a little longer, sparring with Izumi in taijutsu to test the effect of his new bonus. Feeling its powerful effect firsthand, he finally bid them farewell and headed home. But as he stepped inside, he was surprised to see Danzo already waiting for him. "Old man, you're back?" Yami asked in astonishment. Danzo rarely came home. He practically lived in Root's underground base. Even when Yami was younger, Danzo had been more like a distant shadow. Yami had insisted he needed sunlight as an excuse to avoid staying underground with him. Danzo gave a rare chuckle. "I rushed off last time and forgot to give you your birthday present." He slid a long, plain wooden box toward Yami. "Open it and see for yourself. It's just a birthday gift." Was it really worth a personal delivery? Yami muttered under his breath, but still lifted the lid of the wooden box. Inside lay a katana, slim, razor sharp, its cold gleam suggesting it could slice through anything effortlessly. The hilt was wrapped in a snakeskin patterned material to enhance grip and friction. Yami's eyes widened. "Wait, is this the Kusanagi sword?" "Good eye," Danzo replied, his face remaining stoic, though a trace of satisfaction colored his voice. "Orochimaru caught wind of your birthday and had me pass this on. Think of it as a gift from both of us." Yami. "Yeah, right. Like Orochimaru would be that generous without a catch." If he didn't already know what kind of person Orochimaru was, he might have actually been fooled. Still, he couldn't help feeling moved. No matter how ruthless Danzo could be toward others, he seemed to genuinely care for his grandson with no hidden agenda. "Thank you, Grandpa." Danzo stiffened slightly. Was this the first time Yami had called him that? Ding. Host's bond with Shimura. Danzo has reached stage 3, final stage. Reward, 1 unit of standard Jonin Chakra, special talent, Ninja World Darkness. Ninja World Darkness, host can blend into shadows, achieving stealth akin to the Mayfly technique. Yami blinked in surprise. Was simply calling him Grandpa enough to max out the bond? They stared at each other awkwardly until Danzo finally coughed to break the tension. "It's late. Go get some sleep, you have class tomorrow. And remember, don't lose to the Uchiha." "Got it." Yami nodded, grabbed the box with the Kusanagi sword, and headed back to his room. On the way, he firmed up a decision. Dying sealing some random bridge? How laughable. Once he gained enough strength, he would take command of Root himself. Let the old man enjoy a peaceful retirement. That night, sitting cross-legged on his bed, Yami turned the Kusanagi sword over in his hands, feeling its weight, before checking his gains for the day. Status screen. Name, Shimura Yami. Gender, male. Age, 6. Birthday, April 1st, year 46, Konoha calendar. Chakra nature, fire, genius, wind, genius, yang, excellent, earth, good, yin, genius. Total chakra, 1.1 standard Jonin units. Chakra control, genius level. Mastered techniques, basic 3, proficient, wind style, great breakthrough, average, fire style, great fireball, average. Nature transformation mastery, wind release, mastered. Special talents, father's expectations, mother's love, Senja bloodline, thin, developing, swordsmanship prodigy, stealth expert, ninja world darkness, future mother-in-law's favor. His progress was honestly unbelievable. Before today, he was just another academy standout, a prodigy, but still just a kid. Now, he had Jonin level chakra, new chakra natures, and 2 powerful talents under his belt. The earth release chakra wasn't too exciting unless he discovered he had genius level talent for it, he wouldn't waste his time there. But the yin release, now that was a real treasure. Yin release was rare, tied to spiritual energy and the art of illusions. It could even shape thoughts into reality. The Nara clan's shadow jutsu and the Yamanaka clan's mind techniques. Both stemmed from yin release. Even more importantly, the Sharingan, the Uchiha clan's signature, relied heavily on it too. If he intended to forge a connection to the Uchiha in the future, strengthening his yin release would be essential. But for now, Yami's gaze lingered on the Kusanagi sword resting beside him. Swordsmanship would be his current focus. With his mastery of wind release, every strike could be as deadly as a Jonin's attack. And then there was the Jonin level chakra. He focused inward, sensing it carefully. By his estimates, about 50 times more than a typical genin. About 5 times that of an average genin. Still short of an elite jonin, but impressive nonetheless. It made sense. To truly skyrocket his strength, he would need more bonds, especially deep 2nd and 3rd stage ones. Thus, Yami set himself a new objective. Become the ultimate social master of the ninja world. The following day, Yami returned to the academy as usual. Thanks to yesterday's stunt with the explosive tag, his reputation had already spread among the upper years. Now that first impressions were made, all he needed to do was learn their names. Bond formation would follow naturally. After school, he went to Izumi's house for taijutsu training under Ebisu-sensei. Although the lessons were paid for one student, Ebisu wouldn't dare argue with the Shimura family. He reluctantly accepted Izumi joining as well. With mother-in-law's favor boosting his growth, Yami's taijutsu skills advanced at a terrifying rate. He had already surpassed most fresh genin in Konoha's basic taijutsu. At this pace, Ebisu suddenly realized he might soon be out of a job. A sense of crisis took root in his heart. Meanwhile, Izumi had no such concerns. The black-haired girl watched Yami with shining eyes, full of admiration. Yami is incredible, and he's still hiding his full strength at school. I have to work harder. I won't let him leave me behind. A month slipped by in the blink of an eye. The streets of Konoha had become even greener, and the faint hum of cicadas signaled the arrival of summer. Within the Shimura compound, Yami was locked in a fierce sparring session against a shinobi. Their blades clashed at high speed, leaving only flashes of steel and blurred shadows in their wake. On the sidelines, Izumi sat quietly, unable to keep track of their movements. All she could hear was the sharp clanging of swords and catch glimpses of the two figures exchanging blows. Suddenly, Yami raised his sword high, forcing his opponent to tilt back, narrowly dodging a fatal strike aimed at his throat. But just as the shinobi avoided the attack, Yami's strike shifted mid-motion. What appeared to be a vertical slash turned into a swift sideways blow. The flat side of his blade smacked against his opponent's arm. Clang! The shinobi's sword slipped from his grip and clattered onto the floor. The match was decided. Yami exhaled slowly, sheathing his sword as he said calmly, "You lost, Nishimura-sensei." Nishimura-K remained silent for a few seconds. He was an ordinary root operative, a Chunin-level shinobi skilled in both assassination and swordsmanship. Young Master Yami is truly a prodigy, Nishimura-K finally sighed, bowing his head slightly. Throughout the duel, he hadn't used his full speed or physical strength after all, his opponent was just a 6-year-old boy. But in terms of technique, he had gone all out. Even though he had only been teaching Yami for 2 weeks, the boy had already absorbed and outclassed skills that Nishimura had spent years perfecting. Geniuses, it seemed, truly lived in a different realm than ordinary shinobi like him. "Young Master Yami," Nishimura said, bowing even deeper. "I have nothing more to teach you. I will inform Lord Danzo and request a more fitting instructor for you." "Thank you," Yami nodded slightly, watching as Nishimura left. Then he turned toward Izumi with a smile, motioning for her to join him. "Come on, I'll walk you home." Izumi eagerly hopped down from her spot, rushed over, and grabbed Yami's hand. "Hihi, Yami, you're amazing. Nishimura-sensei is a chunin, and you still beat him. It's just a chunin. You should set your sights higher, Izumi," Yami said calmly as they walked. There wasn't a trace of arrogance in his voice, only a quiet certainty. He had realized something crucial: one couldn't measure a shinobi's strength just by their official rank like in the stories. What was a genin? Anyone who could master the 3 basic techniques proficiently could graduate from the academy and earn the genin title. Most of them weren't even qualified for the battlefield, they were cannon fodder. Chunin, meanwhile, were leaders, tougher, more capable fighters who led squads on missions. According to the system's assessment, an average chunin had 10 times the chakra of a standard genin and could handle B-rank jutsu proficiently. Defeating a basic chunin in a sword fight? Nothing impressive, really. Honestly, even if Nishimura had gone all out, it wouldn't have changed the outcome. Status panel. Name: Shimura Yami. Gender: male. Age: 6 years old. Date of birth: April 1st, year 46, Konoha calendar. Chakra attributes: fire, genius; wind, genius; yang, excellent; earth, good; water, good; yin, genius. Total chakra: 1.6 times that of a standard jonin. Chakra control talent: genius. Mastered ninjutsu: 3 basic techniques: proficient, wind release; great breakthrough; proficient, wind release; gale palm; proficient, fire release; great fireball; proficient, fire release; blazing fire; proficient, fire release; dragon fire technique, normal. Nature transformation: wind release; mastery, fire release; beginner. Strength evaluation: even with those small limbs, you can still take down a chunin head-on. Recently, Yami hadn't received any major system rewards. Most of his bond rewards had been small boosts to chakra or basic attributes. Still, thanks to Izumi's support, his training results had been excellent. He had once thought about asking Izumi to move out of the Uchiha compound, but eventually, he abandoned the idea. At present, the village and the Uchiha clan were not at a point of open conflict yet. As a child, his influence was limited. Even if he spoke up, Izumi's mother would likely brush him off, and worse, it could draw attention from scheming eyes. It was better to wait. The Uchiha still had a few more years left. Meanwhile, at root headquarters. After leaving the Shimura compound, Nishimura arrived at the root base and quickly knelt before Shimura Danzo. "Lord Danzo, young Master Yami's sword skills have surpassed my own. I am no longer a suitable teacher for him." "So soon?" Danzo raised an eyebrow, surprised. "I see. You may leave." Nishimura bowed low and disappeared. It seems Yami's talent is even greater than I expected. Though pleased, Danzo also felt a faint headache rising. On one hand, he was thrilled at Yami's terrifying potential. On the other hand, finding a new, worthy instructor would be a challenge. Konoha didn't have many elite swordsmen available. Maraboshi Kasuke was an option, but he was too close to Hiruzen Sarutobi, an unstable choice. Danzo wasn't confident he could sway him. The Yamashiro clan. Danzo considered it briefly but dismissed the thought. Their sword master was skilled, but not enough no better than Nishimura realistically. The same went for the Hojiki family, another dead end. Then, a name surfaced in Danzo's mind. A young man. Despite his youth, his swordsmanship was outstanding. His background was suitable too. The only issue, his identity, was delicate. After a long moment of deliberation, Danzo made up his mind. For Yami's future, it was a risk worth taking. The next morning, weekend. There were no academy classes today. Yami was about to step out of the house when Danzo appeared. Yami, I've found you a new teacher, Danzo said with a rare smile. Not only is he a master of the sword, but he's also well versed in ninjutsu and taijutsu. Who is it? Yami asked, intrigued. Swish. A breeze swept through the room. A young man suddenly appeared beside Danzo, his movement as silent as a ghost. Yami turned to look and his eyes widened slightly in shock. It was him. Hello, my name is Uchiha Shisui. A boy with dark hair and a gentle expression appeared almost instantaneously. He appeared to be around 11 or 12 years old, standing just over 1.5 meters tall. But Yami wasn't foolish enough to underestimate him. Uchiha Shisui was regarded as the most exceptional prodigy within the Uchiha clan. Apart from the infinite Tsukuyomi, he wielded the most formidable genjutsu Koda Amatsukami. He was also the mentor who guided Atake towards awakening his main Jikyoshari Nan. At this moment, Yami couldn't help but wonder if Danzo's decision to entrust Shisui with such a task had been wise, especially considering the circumstances. He found it odd that Danzo had allowed Shisui, the Uchiha's finest, to take on this role. Shisui, despite his abilities, was part of the Uchiha clan, a clan that Danzo had opposed for years. Why was he trusting Shisui with the training of his grandson? Danzo, the second most staunch anti-Uchiha figure in the shinobi world, after Senju Tobirama, had allowed Shisui to teach Yami? Noticing Yami's puzzled look, Danzo assumed he doubted Shisui's qualifications. His tone turned more serious. Yami, don't let Shisui's age fool you. He's no ordinary shinobi. Shisui has completed 8 S-rank missions and over 20 A-rank missions. He's an expert in the body flicker technique and kenjutsu. Enemies from rival villages call him Shisui of the body flicker. You would do well to learn from him. Yami didn't respond right away. Shisui, on the other hand, scratched the back of his head, looking awkward but polite, like an ordinary teen. Danzo-sama, you're overestimating me. I still have much to learn. Danzo gave him a brief glance but said nothing. Still learning? Was he aiming for Hokage status or something? Yami sighed internally and nodded in acknowledgement. Shisui-senpai, I look forward to your guidance. Can I call you that? Shisui asked. Yami gave a nod, and Shisui grinned widely. I'll make sure to teach you all I know to help you grow into a remarkable shinobi. And don't call me Shisui-senpai. I'm not that much older than you, just call me Shisui. He sounded sincere. The night before, when Danzo had contacted him and asked if he would be willing to mentor Yami, Shisui had agreed without hesitation. Like Atake, who had learned from Shisui, Shisui no longer focused solely on the Uchiha clan. He understood the bigger picture and saw things from the perspective of the entire village, even from Akage's viewpoint. He was well aware of the fragile relationship between his clan and Konoha, especially in times as sensitive as these. Shisui still believed that the tension could be resolved. Unlike Atake, he hadn't lost hope. Danzo's request, from his view, was a hopeful sign, a hint that the village was willing to trust him, a Uchiha. Yami's background was important too. He had close ties to Uchiha Izumi. If Shisui could influence Yami, he might be able to affect Danzo's stance, subtly shifting the larger situation. Even if that didn't happen, at the very least, Shisui could make Danzo see his position. Host and Uchiha Shisui have established a master-disciple bond. Reward, dynamic vision. Fuse it. As expected, the system chimed in with a notification. Yami was initially surprised but quickly accepted the reward. Suddenly, the world around him seemed to slow, as though he could track every subtle motion of the wind. The sensation faded almost immediately, unnoticed by the others. You two can begin your training now. I have official matters to attend to, Danzo stated as he made his exit. However, the 2 Jonin guards Danzo had brought along stayed behind, watching Shisui's every move with cautious eyes. Danzo had his reasons for this. By selecting Shisui and Uchiha loyal to Konoha, he could offer the Uchiha clan a sense of security, making them think the village had no plans to act against them. Simultaneously, Yami's safety was a priority. The Jonin-level guards stationed nearby acted as a safeguard, ensuring that Shisui didn't brainwash or otherwise manipulate Yami. Such high-level figures always had their own agendas. A seemingly simple decision could be part of a complex strategy. In the courtyard. Yami, what would you like to focus on first? Shisui asked with a kind tone. Danzo-sama mentioned that you have both fire and wind release. The Uchiha clan is known for fire release, and I understand you incorporate sword techniques with it. I've got something else to do this morning, Shisui-senpai. Let's train later this afternoon, Yami said. If you'd like, you can accompany me, he added. Where to? Shisui asked, curious. Half an hour later, Konoha Orphanage. Shisui stood at the entrance of a modest building. The Konoha Orphanage. Come in, Yami said, waving for him to follow. Behind them, several shinobi carrying large bundles of supplies followed. The orphanage was on the outskirts of the village. It wasn't large, just a 3-story building with a yard about half the size of a football field. A kind-faced woman in her early 30s stood among a group of young children, playing and laughing with them. She smiled warmly but seemed to sense something when she noticed Yami approaching with his companions. She quickly walked over to greet them. Well, hello there. What brings you here? She asked, addressing Yami directly, sensing his leadership. Are you Director Nono? Yami asked with a bright smile. I'm Shimura Yami. I'm Hiraki's classmate. I heard the orphanage has been struggling with supplies, so I brought some things to help. Shimura-kun. A boy Yami's age ran up to him, his face full of gratitude, though no second stage bond notification appeared. Nono's eyes narrowed slightly, but she controlled her reaction and smiled. Thank you so much, Shimura-kun. It's nothing. My family has more than enough, Yami replied casually. Nono's lips twitched at his response. Shisui, who had been silent, observed the interaction and couldn't help but be moved by Yami's kindness. Such a selfless child, even at this age, thinking of others. Was this the will of fire? The children at the orphanage were treated to an unexpected feast. Naturally, Yami's offerings were far from ordinary. Most of the food he brought consisted of various types of meat, a luxury the orphans at Konoha's orphanage rarely experienced. They only had access to meat a few times a month, and even then, the portions were minimal. Today's meal, however, was a rare delight. Despite the joy around him, Yami remained in a somber mood. His expression was grim, and he spoke little. Is something wrong with the food? Nono noticed his mood, speaking cautiously. I apologize if it's not to your liking. The chef here isn't particularly skilled. If she were just an ordinary orphanage director, she might not have been so concerned, even if Yami had brought valuable supplies. But Nono was far from just that. She had another, far more secret role. Yakushi Nono, an elite member of Root, a secretive group within Konoha. She had completed numerous covered missions, earning the title, Wandering Maiko. Most of the children at the orphanage were potential shinobi candidates, a valuable resource for Root. Nono was keenly aware of Danzo'S harshness. Yami, being the last of his bloodline, was someone she had to be cautious around. Any misstep in her handling of him could destroy her future plans. That's why she was so careful, watching his reactions closely. It's nothing. Yami shook his head, quickly finishing his meal. He set down his chopsticks and said, Director Nono, I have training this afternoon, so I must leave soon. As he stood, Shisui also ended his conversation with the children. Yami walked over to a white-haired boy who had been speaking with Shisui earlier. What's your name? He asked. Kabuto, the boy replied softly, a grateful look in his eyes. All right, Kabuto, I'll come visit again soon, Yami smiled, then turned to leave with Shisui and the shinobi that accompanied him. Having spent a good portion of the day at the orphanage, Yami had interacted with nearly 200 children. However, only 20 of them had developed a bond with him, granting him rewards. It wasn't surprising that Yami wasn't in the best mood. Most of those 20 had basic chakra, and only a few had more unique attributes. If it weren't for the rewards from Nono and Kabuto, his frustration would have been worse. Host has established a vigilance bond with Yakushi Nono, obtaining chakra control talent, excellent. Host has established a gratitude bond with Yakushi Kabuto, obtaining chakra control talent, genius. Chakra control might seem like a small matter, but in reality, it was extremely crucial. The basics, like tree climbing and water walking, were just the beginning. The true test came in the ability to control chakra during combat. In game terms, chakra was akin to mana. A larger chakra pool allowed for more jutsu, but didn't necessarily make them stronger. The power of a jutsu depended on several factors. The amount of chakra infused. The user's mastery over nature transformation. The jutsu's inherent strength. Chakra control determined not only the maximum output of a jutsu but also a shinobi's ability to master more advanced techniques. Take Uzumaki Naruto's wind release, Raisin Shuriken, for instance. It required exceptional chakra control and advanced nature transformation to even begin attempting. After integrating the rewards, Yami's chakra control talent hadn't yet reached the highest level, but it had significantly improved. Aside from Tsunade, Yami's chakra control was now among the best in the entire shinobi world. Back at the Chimera clan estate, Yami resumed training with Shisui. Since it was their first session together, there was no set structure to the training. Instead, Shisui had Yami go all out, using every technique he knew, so Shisui could assess his level. Without revealing his hidden nature transformations, Yami showed off his full strength, impressing Shisui repeatedly. At Yami's age, Shisui himself had been far weaker. His growth had only accelerated after awakening his Sharingan. Particularly in Kenjutsu, no wonder Danzo had asked Shisui to mentor Yami. As the sun set, signaling the end of their training session, Shisui smiled at Yami. "Tomorrow, I'll bring the Uchiha clan's Kenjutsu scroll. As for the body flicker technique, I'll teach it once your swordsmanship reaches a certain level. How does that sound?" Yami nodded. "I'll follow your guidance, Shisui." It was clear Shisui was genuinely invested in teaching him. Not only was he offering Uchiha Kenjutsu, but he was also willing to pass on his famous body flicker technique. After watching Shisui leave, Izumi, who had been waiting for food, thought she could finally eat. However, Yami pulled her along and bought a massive amount of green peppers from the market. He had Abarame Seiji and Yamanaka Ryo help carry them to the orphanage. Under Nono's confused gaze, Yami, acting like a spoiled heir, ordered the orphanage chef to stop preparing dinner and instead serve an all-green pepper feast. In Konoha, green peppers were one of the most disliked foods both among children and many adults. Their pungent smell and unpleasant taste made them the culinary equivalent of cilantro to many. Most cooking methods in Konoha only made them worse, with boiling or steaming rendering them nearly inedible. Yami's purchase wiped out the entire market's stock. Plates of green peppers were served. Nono, trying to make the best of it, lectured the children on the health benefits of green peppers, while the children grimaced and swallowed their meals with great difficulty. Yami grinned, proudly declaring, "Don't worry. I'll bring even more green peppers next week. Eat them without hesitation." Wah! A child couldn't hold back and began crying, triggering a chain reaction. Soon, the orphanage was filled with wails and sobs. Nono and the staff scrambled to comfort the children, while Yamanaka Ryo and Abarame Seiji looked on, unable to stop their twitching faces. Their young master was truly merciless. As expected of Danzo'S grandson. After the green pepper feast, the orphanage was thrown into chaos, and Yami got exactly what he had been aiming for. Over 100 new bonds reached the first stage instantly, with system notifications flooding in so quickly that he could hardly keep track. Some notifications even awarded him multiple rewards at once. A realization struck him. People rarely remember kindness, but hatred? Hatred tends to stick. If he wanted to establish bonds with everyone, the quickest method wasn't through friendship. That would be impossible. But, making them feel disgust, fear, or even hatred. Only emotions like hatred could unite the world in a common understanding. Yami suddenly felt a flicker of regret. If he had the reputation of someone like Danzo, along with the fear he commanded, and the ability to shift blame, the rewards he could gather from these bonds might have made him unstoppable in the ninja world. Kabuto quietly observed Yami. One moment, Yami was grinning, the next, his face had fallen into its usual indifference. Kabuto couldn't shake off a sense of unease. This kid was terrifyingly unpredictable. Host has reached the second stage of the bond with Yakushi Kabuto. Reward, special talent, scientific research ability. Yami snapped out of his thoughts and glanced at Kabuto. What was this kid thinking? How had he suddenly moved to the second stage? At the Ninja Academy, Kazuma Shuaki stood in front of the class, his expression serious. Tomorrow is the final exam. This will test everything you've learned over the past year, with 2 parts, a written exam in the morning and a practical one in the afternoon. The third Hokage will also be present to observe your performance. The classroom buzzed with excitement immediately. The Hokage is coming. I've only seen him at the entrance ceremony. This is amazing. If I do well and get praised by the Hokage, my parents will stop scolding me. Although the village's ideological lessons hadn't yet been heavily enforced, the third Hokage had ruled for over 2 decades, and his prestige was unmatched. The mention of his visit got the students energized. Even Itaka straightened up subconsciously. Kazuma Shuiki patiently waited for the excitement to die down before continuing. I expect all of you to do your best. If anyone fails, your homework for the next semester will be doubled. The noisy classroom quieted immediately. The more mischievous students sat up straight, and Shuiki dismissed the class. As usual, Yami walked home with Izumi. He wasn't particularly concerned about the third Hokage's visit. Besides keeping up appearances and reinforcing his reputation, he knew that Hiruzen's real interest was in Itaka. Every Uchiha prodigy caused unease within the village. And Itaka wasn't just a genius, he was also the son of the clan leader. Naturally, Hiruzen would want to keep an eye on him. Izumi, I plan to graduate after the exam. Huh. The little girl, who was snacking on Chibi Mariko treats, froze before growing anxious. Graduate early? Then I want to graduate early too. Having trained with Yami every day, Izumi knew his strength well. Forget graduating, he was already strong enough to be a Chunin. She had reached the level of a graduate herself. For some reason, whenever she trained with Yami, her mind felt sharper, and her progress had skyrocketed compared to practicing at home. She had already mastered the 3 basic techniques and learned 2 fire release jutsu. Her only shortcoming was chakra capacity. Of course, that was when compared to adult shinobi. As an Uchiha, even without activating her Sharingan, Izumi's chakra reserves were much higher than average. She was already at least at the level of a genin. Izumi, you can't graduate yet. Yami stopped and looked at her seriously. The war isn't over. Even if you don't go to the battlefield, the missions you'll get will still be dangerous. If you wait 2 more years to graduate, things will be much better. Then stay in school with me. Izumi pouted, her expression tense at the mention of war. We can graduate together after it's all over. Izumi, I can't learn anything more by staying in school. It would be a waste of time. And don't worry about my safety. The village won't assign me any dangerous missions. After some persuasion, Yami managed to convince Izumi to give up on graduating early. For now, he could barely protect himself, let alone look out for Izumi as well. If he stayed in school, he wouldn't be able to interact with enough shinobi or form new bonds. He needed to graduate. Otherwise, he'd be stuck repeating grades until eventually graduating with Hanabi. Meanwhile, in the Uchiha district. In a small forest, several trees lined with targets stood, and Uchiha Itaka, practicing his shuriken techniques, suddenly paused, as if processing something. After a moment, he opened his eyes again. Final exam, the third Hokage. Absorbing the report from his shadow clone, Itaka showed no noticeable reaction and simply returned to his training. Only when the smell of dinner filled the air did he gather his ninja tools and head home. Brother! Brother! A small figure wobbled out of the house. A gentle smile appeared on Itaka's face as he quickly stepped forward to pick up the child. Sasuke! Brother, hug me. All right, come here. As he held little Sasuke, Itaka felt this was the happiest moment of his day. A soft voice called from the kitchen. Itaka, you're back. Go wash up and get ready for dinner. And help Sasuke wash his hands too. Got it, Mom. Carrying Sasuke, Itaka headed to the bathroom. At dinner that evening, Uchiha Fugaku mentioned the final exam. I heard the third Hokage will be visiting the school. Make sure you perform well and don't bring shame to the Uchiha name. Yes. Itaka nodded calmly as he carefully removed the bones from his fish and placed small pieces into Sasuke's mouth. That was the end of their conversation. No one in the household considered the exam to be a matter of much importance. The following day, the students gathered at the academy, and the final exams began without delay. In truth, the students at the Ninja Academy worked incredibly hard. The amount of material to be learned each day was substantial, even for first-year students. Basic chakra control, shuriken practice twice a week, 2 taijutsu classes daily, plus at least 4 hours of academic lessons on top of it all. When compared to elementary schools from his previous life, this workload was intense. The academic courses themselves were quite varied, covering subjects like physics, chemistry, poisons, and even the history and geography of various lands, creating an unusual mix of disciplines. As Yami scanned the test paper filled with numbers and equations, he sighed before beginning to answer the questions. Question: there is a ninja 30 meters away in the southeast direction. The wind is blowing from north to south at a speed of 10 meters per second. Please calculate the trajectory and approximate the force needed for the throw. Answer: attach an explosive tag to the shuriken and throw it however you like. If it doesn't explode, I lose. Question: the target is being guarded by 3 ninjas, positions shown in the diagram. Please design a route to complete the assassination and escape successfully. Answer: use the Flying Thunder God technique to eliminate the 3 guards first, take out the target, and leave the same way. Question: list 3 contributions the third Hokage has made to Konoha. Answer: banned gambling within the village. No other contributions. Still none. Question: write an essay about your feelings for the village. Answer: my grandfather is the Hokage's advisor. In less than an hour, Yami had finished the entire test. Instead of handing it in right away, he waited until the time was up before submitting it with the rest of his classmates. Just as he was about to leave for lunch with Izumi, Kazuma Shuaki stopped him. Yami, Kazuma Shuaki called with a friendly smile. This afternoon we have a shuriken throwing test. The third Hokage wants to see your true abilities, not just your resources. So, no explosive tags this time. Since Yami had shocked the class by attaching explosive tags to his shuriken and blowing up multiple targets in practice, Shuaki had found it difficult to stop him. But today was different. With the third Hokage present, if Yami used explosive tags again, it would be an embarrassment for Shuaki. I won't use explosive tags, Yami replied with a grin. But in return, Kazuma-sensei, you need to agree to one of my requests. In the afternoon, the first-year students gathered at the testing grounds. It wasn't long before Sarutobi Hiruzen arrived, dressed in his Hokage attire, accompanied by his guards. The students rushed forward, eager to see him. Hiruzen dismissed his guards and greeted the children with a warm smile. If not for his Hokage robe, he could have easily been mistaken for a kindly old man. Yami didn't rush to join the crowd. Instead, he stayed at a distance, quietly observing the Hokage. Though Yami had a deep connection with his grandfather, this was the first time he had seen Hiruzen in person. There were still 10 years before the events of the main story, and Hiruzen hadn't yet reached his older age, he was still in his 50s. Suddenly, as if sensing his gaze, Hiruzen looked up. Their eyes met. After a brief moment, Hiruzen quickly recognized him and approached, followed by his entourage. You must be Yami, Hiruzen said, smiling. That's me, Yami nodded. Hello, old monkey. The students and teachers around them froze in surprise. Kazuma Shuaki stood with his mouth agape, unable to hide his thoughts. This is it. My career as a teacher is over. Old monkey. Yami's words left everyone stunned. Surprisingly, Hiruzen didn't show anger. Instead, he simply furrowed his brow and gently tapped Yami on the head. That old fool Danzo must have taught you that. Don't pick up bad habits from him. Yami. This is bad. My biggest obstacle to gaining bond rewards is my own grandfather. The blame cage was too powerful. Hiruzen immediately assumed Yami's disrespect was Danzo's influence. Yami had spoken that way because, first, his status protected him, and second, because of Hiruzen's public image, he was unlikely to take offense at the words of a child. Unfortunately, not only did Hiruzen not take offense, but he also brushed it off entirely, meaning Yami wouldn't receive any bond rewards from this interaction. Seeing Yami's disappointed look, Hiruzen ruffled his hair. I'll keep an eye on your performance today. If I'm not impressed, I'll make sure to speak with your grandfather about it. With a chuckle, Hiruzen walked away. The test began. One by one, the students stepped forward for the shuriken throwing test. When Ataka's turn came, Hiruzen, who had previously seemed laid back, straightened up. As Ataka launched 5 shuriken at once, all hitting the target perfectly, Hiruzen stroked his beard and nodded in approval. As expected from the Uchiha clan. Their control over shurikenjutsu is outstanding, even without the Sharingan. To his surprise, Yami used the exact same technique. This is Uchiha shurikenjutsu. Even Itachi was caught off guard. As the son of the Uchiha clan leader, Itachi had access to confidential information and had never heard of Yami receiving training in Uchiha techniques. What he didn't know was that Danzo had forbidden Shisui from mentioning that he was mentoring Yami. Hiruzen whispered something to a nearby guard, his expression unreadable, before returning to his usual calm demeanor. Soon, the shuriken test concluded, and the next phase taijutsu sparring began. The students whose names I call will step forward, form the seal of confrontation, and only start fighting when I give the signal. After the match, you must perform the seal of reconciliation, just as I've taught you in class, Kazuma Shuiki explained. After announcing the rules, he called out the first match. First match, Arakawa Kenta vs. Horikawa Koichi. The two boys stepped into the ring. The first-year taijutsu matches weren't particularly impressive. Their only advantage over regular children was their enhanced speed and strength due to chakra, but their techniques were rudimentary. After only a few moves, Horikawa Koichi quit, clutching his stomach in pain, and left the field with tears in his eyes. Kazuma Shuiki sighed, glancing at Sarutobi Hiruzen, whose face was unreadable. He then looked at the match schedule, his eyes stopping at the final pairing. Second match, Shimura Yami vs. Uchiha Itachi. The crowd erupted in excitement. Itachi and Yami were both hailed as prodigies whether within their class or across the entire academy. Itachi had the advantage of his prestigious family name and consistently aced every test. Yami, however, had earned his reputation through raw power. Even older students had fallen to his strength, earning him a reputation as somewhat of a school troublemaker. The two had never clashed directly, and their respective strengths had become a topic of much speculation. Many of the students leaned toward Itachi being the superior, given the weight carried by the Uchiha name. But today, they were about to witness their first battle. The class was buzzing with anticipation. Go, Yami. You've got this. Show that arrogant Uchiha who's boss. They're both so cute, but I think Yami is cuter. Let's go, Yami. The energy in the air was palpable, with most cheering for Yami, except for those who had felt his wrath firsthand. Though Yami often looked down on these students, he wasn't one to snub those who approached him, which made him surprisingly well liked. Itachi, however, remained detached and introspective, living up to the typical Uchiha stereotype. Even Hiruzen leaned forward, intrigue flashing in his eyes. In the open field, Yami and Itachi stood at a distance, facing each other. Earlier in the day, Yami had specifically asked Kazuma Shuiki to arrange this duel. Earning the title of genius would leave a lasting impression and pave the way for future connections. Not to mention, it gave him a chance to deal with Itachi. Kazuma Shuiki stepped forward. Both of you, perform the seal of confrontation. Yami and Itachi raised their hands, performing the gesture as instructed. Kazuma then took a step back, signaling for the match to begin. Itachi immediately fell into position, but what surprised him was that Yami didn't move. Instead, Yami turned to Kazuma. Sensei, I don't think we'll be needing the seal of reconciliation today. Before Kazuma could inquire further, Yami surged forward. So quick. Gasps spread through the crowd. The first-year students could barely process the blur as Yami closed the distance, appearing right in front of Itachi. Even Hiruzen's eyes widened. This body flicker technique. It's reminiscent of Uchiha Shisui's. Itachi's instincts screamed danger. Seeing the incoming punch, he quickly raised his arms to defend. But Yami was too fast. Before Itachi could fully react. Boom. A cloud of smoke erupted. Itachi had vanished. A shadow clone. Hiruzen jumped to his feet. His guards were stunned. Given Yami's speed and force, what shocked them more was his mastery of the B-rank shadow clone technique learned in his first year and the fact that he had even sent a clone to attend his classes. Sensei, I told you we wouldn't need the seal of reconciliation, Yami said nonchalantly. But it's okay. If Itachi comes back tomorrow, we can have our fight then. With that, Yami formed a hand seal and vanished in a puff of smoke. Another shadow clone. Hiruzen was utterly speechless. Outside the academy, under the shade of a large tree, the real Yami relaxed, eyes closed, enjoying a nap. If he had only used a shadow clone to defeat Itachi with one punch, it wouldn't have been enough to make a lasting impression. In the end, Itachi would still have the spotlight, and Yami would be overlooked as just a stepping stone. So, before the fight even began, he had swapped himself with a shadow clone. Now, he waited for his rewards to roll in. Host has established a bond with Yamanaka Jun. Reward, Earth Release Nature Transformation, excellent. Host has established a bond with Narashikaku. Reward, Yin Attribute Chakra, ordinary. Host has established a bond with Hirashi Eiji. Reward, plus 0.5 Standard Jonin Chakra. Host has established a bond with Sarutobi Hiruzen. Reward, Fire, Water, Wind, Earth, and Lightning Attributes, Genius. Yami's eyes lit up. Finally, Hiruzen had delivered a major reward. The third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen was known as the Professor of Ninjutsu. Despite not having a unique bloodline, his mastery of all 5 elemental releases allowed him to create potent jutsu, making him a formidable cage-level shinobi. His performance in his fight against Orochimaru could not be taken at face value. After all, he was an elderly man in his 70s, already wounded before the battle even started. Expecting him to perform at full strength was unreasonable. In truth, the third and fourth Hokage represented the peak of ordinary shinobi. The third Tsuchikage, Onaki, was also comparable, but his dust release was a rare Kekkei Toda technique, making it hard to fairly compare. For Yami to gain 5 genius-level elemental affinities so early in his bond with Hiruzen. What would the second stage hold? The third? Tisk. Old man, look at Hiruzen, and then look at yourself. No wonder you never became Hokage. Yami chuckled and activated his body flicker technique, vanishing from the tree in an instant. Back at the academy, the entire school was in turmoil. Kazuma Shuaki was close to passing out. Both students had used shadow clones for the exam, and he hadn't realized it. Keep the test going. I'll speak with Yami and Itaka later, Hiruzen ordered, regaining his composure. Yes, Lord Hokage. Once all the students had finished, Hiruzen gave a few encouraging words before hastily leaving. Summon Danzo and Uchiha Fugaku to my office. Understood. Anumbu disappeared into the shadows. Before long, both men arrived at the Hokage building, exchanging knowing glances. Uchiha Fugaku gave a brief bow. Danzo, as stoic as ever, paused for 2 seconds before striding into the building. Later that night, after leaving the Hokage building, Danzo returned home immediately. Yami, are you awake? I'm up. Yami opened his bedroom door and walked downstairs, holding a book. Danzo nodded in approval. You did well today. Watching the Uchiha suffer was always satisfying. But seeing his own grandson land the blow? Even better. It was just a shadow clone, nothing to make a big deal of, Yami said casually. Yes, a single shadow clone isn't enough, Danzo agreed. Which is why you'll fight again tomorrow. Hiruzen, I, and the 2 other elders will be there. Uchiha Fugaku will observe too. Yami. Do you have the confidence to defeat Uchiha Itachi? Inside the Uchiha compound, Fugaku and Itachi were seated together. I failed you, father. I'm sorry, Itachi murmured, bowing his head in apology. Fugaku had always been a strict father, pushing Itachi from a young age. At only 4 years old, he had taken Itachi to battlefields to show him the brutal side of being a shinobi. Itachi was well aware of his father's expectations, and he had worked tirelessly to meet them. Yet, today, he had been defeated in a single strike. Yami's speed was unmatchable. Itachi could see the attack coming, but his body couldn't react quickly enough. And there was something else gnawing at him. Don't apologize, Fugaku said in a calm tone, his voice surprisingly free of disappointment. The fact that you managed to learn the Shadow Clone Jutsu and use it effectively throughout the day speaks volumes. Itachi's skills had gone beyond what Fugaku had anticipated. Tomorrow, as per the Hokage's request, you will face Shimura once more. If you do well, there's a chance you could graduate early, Fugaku added. I won't disappoint you, father. I'll defeat him, Itachi replied with renewed resolve. Tell me everything about today's match, Fugaku urged. I'll help you break it down. Itachi nodded and recounted the events, though there wasn't much to say. He had been taken down too quickly to do anything. Fugaku's brow furrowed as he listened. Uchiha Shuriken Jutsu, and Shisui's body flicker technique. It seems Shisui is training Shimura, Itachi observed. Why didn't Shisui mention this to me? Itachi asked. Fugaku's eyes narrowed. You fool. This mission is classified. Shimura is Danzo's grandson. Information about him isn't easily shared. If Shisui had told you, it would have been a major issue. Itaka lowered his head in understanding. I see. A shinobi must think before they speak. Never forget that, Fuyugaka warned, then dismissed him with a wave. As for tomorrow's match, your chances of winning are slim. But remember, Uchiha's strength isn't just in jutsu or speed, it's in the Sharingan. Once you awaken it, Shimura won't stand a chance. Fuyugaku's analysis made it clear that Itaka wasn't ready yet to close the gap between them. Get some rest, Fuyugaku advised. Even if you lose, show the village your talent and your strength. That will allow you to graduate early. Itaka nodded and left, retreating to his room to think. Lying in bed, he reflected on the battle, replaying every moment. Sleep did not come easily. At the Hokage's office, Kazuma Shuiki handed Hiruzen the test papers for both Itaki and Yami. Hiruzen, preoccupied with other reports, didn't notice Shuiki's unease and simply nodded for him to leave. After finishing his work, Hiruzen eagerly picked up the papers. Itaki's paper was flawless, well beyond the level of a typical first-year student. However, when he opened Yami's test, Hiruzen's brow furrowed. What's this? Yami had aced every question on the multiple-choice and fill-in-the-blank sections. But it was the essay section, particularly the last question, that shocked Hiruzen. Bang! Hiruzen slammed his fist onto the desk in frustration. 20 years as Hokage, and the only accomplishment I can boast is banning casinos. He muttered angrily. Danzo, this is your fault. How did someone like him turn out this way? Elsewhere, Danzo, deep in the middle of planning secret operations, sneezed twice. His face darkened. That damn Sarutobi. He's just envious of my exceptional grandson. He muttered. The night passed quickly, and the academy's month-long break began. The usually bustling campus was quieter than usual, save for one place, the training grounds. Tables lined the edge of the clearing, with Sarutobi, Hiruzen, Danzo, and the other village elders seated behind them. A dozen shinobi, including Uchiha Fuyugaku, were present, standing by to watch. The match between Yami and Itaki had become the talk of the village. Given their backgrounds, one an Uchiha, the other Danzo's grandson, the battle had drawn much attention. At exactly 9 o'clock, Yami and Itaka stood face to face, just as they had the day before. However, this time both were there in person. An Umbu shinobi in a cat mask now served as the referee instead of the rookie Chunin, Kazuma Shuiki. The rules of the match are simple, the Umbu stated coldly. The fight will end when one of the participants is deemed unable to continue. Now, before we begin. Yami cut him off. No need. The Umbu's eyes narrowed, his gaze turning icy, but before he could respond, he felt multiple killing intents lock onto him. His expression tightened, and he quickly regained his composure. This is the rule, Shimura, the Umbu stated, voice cold. Yami smirked. We already performed the seal of confrontation yesterday. This is just a continuation of that fight, no need for formalities. The Umbu hesitated for a moment before reluctantly stepping back. Hiruzen, watching from the sidelines, turned to Danzo with a smile. Your grandson is certainly something else. Danzo, however, didn't even glance at him. No, your Asuma is still more impressive, Danzo replied curtly. Hiruzen's smile faltered. His youngest son had been rebellious lately, causing tension at home. It had become a constant source of frustration. And now, Danzo had purposely poked at that sore spot. Yotiden Koharu and Mito Kato Homura, seated nearby, stifled their laughter. The two old men's bickering was a long-standing tradition. Some things never changed. Yami stared at Itake, his face serious. Not only did he need to win this match, but he also had to do it without exposing too much of his real abilities. From the experience of many reincarnators, Yami knew that if he showed too much talent, it would draw Danzo's attention. The so-called mainstream faction would regret overlooking him, and Danzo would likely start scheming in the shadows. Wait, he was Danzo's grandson, wasn't he? That was fine. Yami's expression softened. The problem was his own doing. Why worry? Itaki observed Yami's shifting face, unsure of what was going on. But before he could dwell on it, the masked Umbu began the match. The battle begins. The referee's whistle echoed, and both moved in sync. One advanced. The other pulled back. Yami pursued, while Itake avoided. Even as he maneuvered, Itake's hands were busy. His fingers twitched slightly, and in a flash, he sent dozens of shuriken flying. Each one was linked by near-invisible threads. With a precise pull, the shuriken's paths shifted. Some continued to block Yami's approach, while others looped around from both sides, forming a net meant to trap him. The body flicker technique wasn't true teleportation. It was about dramatically enhancing one's speed with chakra. Given Itake's training with Uchiha Shisui, he naturally knew how to counter it. Many onlookers couldn't help but nod in appreciation. There it was, the Uchiha clan's shurikenjutsu. Thanks to the Sharingan's precision and his mastery of chakra control, the Uchiha had turned shurikenjutsu into an art. They could manipulate shuriken mid-flight using threads, making it nearly impossible to counter. But Itake was still blind. Fugaku has certainly raised an impressive son, a Jonin side. Indeed, another Shisui in the making. Who knows what greatness he'll achieve. Konoha's strongest clan, producing geniuses non-stop. Fugaku almost smiled at the praise, suppressing the corners of his mouth with chakra. Yet, he didn't notice the four elders, led by Hiruzen, who remained emotionless. Their faces betrayed no joy. On the battlefield, Yami and Itake kept their distance. It seemed like Itake's strategy was working, but something felt off. Itake's expression shifted. Yami suddenly rushed forward again. Itake instinctively tugged his threads to intercept, but his kunao and shuriken had become tangled together into a messy clump. Realization hit as he recalled Yami's seemingly chaotic movements before. What had appeared to be random spinning was, in fact, a deliberate tactic to entangle his threads. You think I was avoiding you all this time because I was scared? Yami smirked. I was just being considerate of Shisui. But now, this game ends. With a burst of speed, Yami used the body flicker technique to close the gap. He launched a direct punch. Itake raised his arms to block, but pain shot through his arms, and his entire body was sent flying. The impact felt like facing a seasoned ninja, not a peer. Their physical strength was on entirely different levels. Using the momentum, Itake flipped backward to regain distance. Ignoring the pain, he quickly formed hand seals. By the time he landed, only 2 seals remained. Tiger rightward arrow ram. Fire release, great fireball technique. A massive fireball exploded from his mouth, growing to 5 meters across as it rushed forward with intense heat. However, Yami had already predicted his move. The instant Itake began his hand seals, Yami and his shadow clone also started their own. Boom. A cloud of smoke erupted as the clone appeared, but its hand seals were different. Fire release, dragon fire technique. Wind release, great breakthrough. The two techniques merged. Explosion wind dance. In the blink of an eye, a powerful combination was formed. The wind fed the flames, and the flames fueled the wind, amplifying each other exponentially. A fiery dragon spun wildly, roaring toward Itake's fireball. Boom. The fireball burst upon impact, yet the fire dragon kept charging forward. Itake's pupils contracted. He hadn't expected his great fireball to be overwhelmed so easily. The fire dragon, boosted by wind release, moved faster and grew larger. Flames roared in Itake's eyes. There was no time to dodge. At the last moment. Earth release, earth-style wall. A solid earth wall erupted from the ground, shielding him from the flames. When the fire died down, the earthen wall had crumbled, revealing the figure behind it. Uchiha Fugaku. The Uchiha clan leader stood solemnly, gazing at Yami through the remnants of the wall. Itake lost, Shimura Yami. No, father. I haven't. Silence. Fugaku suddenly turned, but when he saw his son, his eyes widened in shock. Itake's eyes were blood red. Each pupil contained a single tomo. Itake, have you awakened the Sharingan? Fugaku's anger vanished instantly, replaced by disbelief. Before he could speak further, Itake collapsed to the ground. Ding. The bond with Uchiha Itake has reached the second stage. Reward, Uchiha bloodline, rich, ... Fugaku quickly scooped up his son and turned to the Hokage's table. Hokage-sama, I must take Itake for medical care. I will leave now. Go, Fugaku, Sarutobi Hiruzen said, his face unreadable beneath his bamboo hat. When he wakes, congratulate him on becoming a genin for me. Danzo remained silent, his head lowered, casting a shadow over his face. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Fugaku gave a small bow before disappearing with a body flicker, rushing toward Konoha Hospital. Watching them leave, Yami let out a soft exhale. It seems I won't be able to complete the reconciliation seal after all. As Fugaku departed, the match was officially concluded. Hiruzen began to walk away, and the gathered shinobi slowly started to disperse. Meanwhile, Danzo approached Yami, placed a hand on his shoulder, and, unable to hide his satisfaction, let a grin slip. Although, it looked slightly unnerving on his face. Yami, you performed well, but don't let it go to your head. The cursed Uchiha has unlocked his Sharingan now. Uchiha Ataka's strength will rise rapidly. You need to stay vigilant, or he might close the gap, Danzo cautioned. Yami casually waved a hand. And so what if he has the Sharingan? He really believes he can surpass me after I defeated him. Impossible. He'll only be chasing after me forever. Danzo's eye twitched. Where did this confidence come from in his grandson? Shouldn't he be more like himself, quiet, reserved, a scheming tactician? Danzo thought about warning him of the dangers of the Mangekyo Sharingan, but this wasn't the time for such discussions. Instead, he simply instructed Yami to wait for him at home that evening before hurrying to follow Sarutobi Hiruzen. Inside the Hokage's office, Danzo didn't knock. He just barged in, his footsteps echoing. Hiruzen stood by the window, looking out over the village. Stop pretending. There's no one else here, Danzo sneered as he took a seat across from the Hokage's desk. I have no idea what you're referring to, Hiruzen responded without turning around. A 7-year-old. You and I both know what he will become. With Uchiha Shisui and now Uchiha Ataka, tell me, Hiruzen, is this still Konoha we're leading, or will it be Uchiha's Konoha? Hiruzen's gaze darkened, and the office fell silent. After a long, weighted silence, Hiruzen let out a deep sigh. Danzo, the war isn't over. We still need the Uchiha's strength. Danzo snorted in disdain. Hiruzen, you never change. Decades have passed, but you still resort to the same tactics. You want honor and results both. But that's fine. Your indecision will allow root to grow. One day, my roots will break free and overtake the entire tree. Enough about the Uchiha, Danzo said dismissively. Let's discuss Yami. Hiruzen returned to his seat, his expression softening into the one he always wore in front of the village, gentle, reassuring. Even with Uchiha Ataka's talent, your Yami easily bested him. His mastery over fire and wind release remarkable. Hiruzen's sharp eyes had noticed every little detail from Yami's battle. Generally, the outcome of a ninjutsu clash depended on chakra reserves and proficiency in nature transformation. Based on the scale of the jutsu, Yami hadn't even expended much chakra. His fire release, dragon fire technique and wind release, great breakthrough were on par with a single great fireball technique in chakra cost. Yet, he had overwhelmed Ataka's fireball and nearly shattered Fugaku's earth-style wall. This was purely down to nature transformation. The quality of the techniques was exceptional. What pleased Hiruzen even more was Yami's fighting style. Combination ninjutsu wasn't that his specialty. Hiruzen didn't possess a Kekkei Genkai, nor did he have yin-yang release techniques. Instead, he had mastered all 5 elemental releases, refining his nature transformation to its limits and developing an array of combination jutsu. Had the timing been right, Hiruzen might have stood up, slammed his fist on the table, and declared, "This kid is just like me." Once his desire for talent was sparked, nothing could quell it. Hiruzen finally voiced his thoughts. Danzo, Yami is an extraordinary talent. You can't train him properly. Let me take him under my wing. I guarantee he'll be the future pillar of Konoha. In your dreams. Danzo's face twisted in anger as he slammed his fist on the table. The sharp sound reverberated through the office. Yami is my grandson. I'll handle his future, not you and your false sense of benevolence. They had known each other for years, and Danzo understood Hiruzen's methods. This was manipulation. If Yami fell for it, he'd become one of those Will of Fire zealots, forever talking about Konoha's bright future. That was intolerable. Hiruzen frowned. Danzo, your nature is too dark. A talent like Yami shouldn't be corrupted by your twisted ideology. He's still a child. He needs proper guidance. If he stays with me, I'll teach him how to be a great shinobi. Danzo was so furious that he cursed aloud. Great shinobi? None of your 3 disciples turned out well. One's obsessed with women, another's a gambler, and the third's addicted to drugs. 2 of them abandoned Konoha. And you think I'll let you train Yami? Hiruzen's face reddened. Lies could be ignored, but the truth? The truth was painful. His 3 disciples had been his greatest failure. Danzo had struck right at Hiruzen's weakest spot. And worse. Danzo had insulted his intelligence. For years, Hiruzen had prided himself on outsmarting Danzo. But today, the roles had reversed. You really won't let me have Yami? Hiruzen asked. Hiruzen, I am his grandfather. Danzo spat. Danzo, you'll regret this. Hiruzen roared. Bang. Hiruzen stormed out of the office, slamming the door behind him. He didn't realize what had just happened until he was halfway down the hall. Wait. This is my office. Danzo should be the one leaving. Realizing his mistake, Hiruzen turned back, pushed open the door, and glared at Danzo. Danzo. This is my office. You should be the one leaving. Inside, Danzo was struggling not to laugh. For years, he'd been the one storming out. But today, Hiruzen was the one who had lost his cool. Of course, Danzo remained composed, maintaining the calm demeanor of Root's leader. If he laughed now, Hiruzen might truly snap. You needn't worry about Yami's future, Danzo said coolly as he rose to leave. Hiruzen sighed deeply. He envied Danzo. At least Danzo had a grandson. Meanwhile, his own son, Sarutobi Shinosuke, had been married for years but had no children. Always away on missions with his wife. And as for his youngest son, still single. No. This couldn't continue. Shinosuke. Hiruzen called out. Moments later, a Numbu wearing a dog mask entered the office. Hiruzen locked eyes with him, issuing a command in a tone that brooked no argument. Effective immediately, you're on leave. Go home and start working on giving me a grandson. Until then, don't come back to Umbu. Sarutobi Shinosuke. Inside a secluded room at Konoha Hospital, Itaki had regained consciousness. He wasn't severely injured, only his fist had been injured from striking Yami. The reason he had fainted was due to his body being overwhelmed by the surge of mental power from activating the Sharingan. It was a natural defense mechanism. After resting for a short time, he had woken up. At that moment, Shisui entered the room. The previous day, Shisui had heard about Itake's duel with Yami, but an urgent mission had come up. He had hurried to complete it and returned immediately. However, he had still arrived too late. He had rushed all the way to Konoha Hospital, only to find Itaki in bed. As Itaki opened his eyes, the first faces he saw were 2 familiar ones, both filled with concern. Father, brother Shisui. Itaki, you're awake. Shisui smiled. I rushed back as quickly as I could, but it seems I missed the excitement. I heard the match was intense. Don't be discouraged, it's normal to lose to Yami-kun. Keep going, and you'll definitely catch up eventually. That's right, Uchiha Fugaku agreed. Winning or losing at your age isn't the most important thing. What matters is that you've awakened your Sharingan. That's an extraordinary achievement. Awakening the Sharingan at such a young age was rare in the post-Sengoku era. The last person to do so had been Shisui himself. And Itake was even half a year younger than Shisui had been at that time. As expected of his son. Despite their encouragement, Itake remained quiet, his expression distant. Fugaku thought for a moment before excusing himself from the room. Although his son was generally calm and mature, Fugaku knew that deep down, Itake was still an Uchiha, proud and driven. Losing to an outsider would undoubtedly weigh heavily on him. There was little else to say. Perhaps Shisui, being closer in age, could help him sort through his thoughts. With Fugaku gone, the mood in the room lightened slightly. At least Itake spoke up. Brother Shisui, did you teach Shimura Yami the Uchiha Shuriken technique and body flicker? Shisui blinked, surprised. He hadn't expected that to be Itake's first question. Still, he nodded. Yes. Itake's expression changed, and he sat up in bed. Since you taught him, How big is the difference between us? Shisui smiled wryly. He didn't answer immediately. He simply shook his head. Itaka clenched his fists. Now that I have the Sharingan, do I still not stand a chance? With the Sharingan, his mental abilities had significantly increased. And since chakra was the result of physical and mental energy, his chakra reserves had also expanded. Itaka was eager for another chance to face Yami. But Shisui still believed he would lose. Itaka. Shisui sighed. The Sharingan is not all-powerful. Seeing the stubborn determination in Itaka's eyes, Shisui softened his tone. You've just unlocked your Sharingan. It's not something you've mastered yet. Besides, a one-tomo Sharingan isn't that powerful. It mostly enhances perception. Even without it, Yami's instincts and speed are terrifying. You're still no match for him. Itaka's gaze darkened. Is Shimura Yami really that strong? At the age of 4, he had been on the battlefield with his father, killing enemy shinobi. And yet, Yami? A lazy clan heir, known for lounging around the village, eating out at restaurants without paying. Yes, without paying. And yet Shisui still believed Itaka couldn't win. Itaka. Shisui looked directly at him, his voice serious. Yami-kun is far more dangerous than you realize. And honestly, I have nothing left to teach him. Itaka's eyes widened in disbelief. That's impossible. To Itaka, Shisui was the strongest shinobi he knew, stronger than even his father. Shisui had mastered various ninjutsu, was a prodigy in taijutsu, and possessed the 3-tomo Sharingan. And yet, even Shisui claimed he was no longer able to teach Yami? If Shisui wasn't enough, then who in the village was? The Hokage? It's not that Yami's power has surpassed mine, Shisui clarified. It's his potential and how quickly he learns. There are some things I probably shouldn't tell you. But I'll make an exception. Just remember, don't tell anyone, not even clan leader Fugaku. Shisui's expression turned grave. Itaka sat up straight. I understand, Shisui. I won't tell anyone. Shisui sighed deeply. He learns at an unbelievable rate. In just 1 week, he mastered the Uchiha Shuriken technique. In 1 month, he learned all of my fire release techniques. A month after that, he mastered the body flicker technique. After 6 months, we fought in a pure sword battle, and it ended in a draw. After that, I stopped teaching him. Yami doesn't need skills or jutsu. He just needs time to grow. Silence. Shimura Yami knows swordsmanship. Itaka's voice sounded hollow. He knew how skilled Shisui was with a sword. With body flicker and genjutsu, Shisui could defeat an enemy in a single strike. And yet Yami had held his own. No. Shisui corrected him. Swordsmanship isn't just something he understands. It's his greatest weapon. Complete silence. Itaka sat frozen. Did this mean he wasn't even on Yami's level? Shisui looked at him with a sigh. Itaka was extraordinary, there was no one his age who could match him. But he was in the same generation as Shimura Yami. Fortunately, with the Sharingan, Itaka still had a chance to catch up. After a long pause, seeing that Itaka had absorbed everything, Shisui spoke again. Itaka, even with the Sharingan, there's something crucial you need to remember. His tone was more serious now. Itaka frowned. What is it? Shisui met his gaze. Until your body is fully mature, use the Sharingan as little as possible. Otherwise, it could cause irreversible damage. Elsewhere in the village, in a quiet, grassy field, 2 figures lay side by side, watching the sky. The younger man spoke softly. Honestly, awakening the Sharingan too early might not be such a great thing. Why? Izumi asked with a hint of curiosity. She had also been at the duel that morning. However, upon seeing so many Jonin and even the Hokage present, she hesitated to approach and instead decided to hide beneath a large tree, watching from a distance. The two of them had been talking about Itaka unlocking his Sharingan, and Izumi had spoken with evident envy. For any member of the Uchiha clan, awakening the Sharingan was a major milestone. But as Yami looked at Izumi, it seemed like she didn't share the same enthusiasm. Because it's too soon, Yami responded, reaching over to ruffle Izumi's smooth black hair. Izumi had been growing her hair since childhood, and it was long, soft, and silky. Izumi puffed her cheeks out and swatted his hand away. She had spent so much time caring for her hair that morning, and in the blink of an eye, it was ruined. Yami chuckled, continuing his explanation. The Sharingan has its advantages, but we're still children. Our bodies are still growing, and it's a phase of rapid development. If the Sharingan is awakened too early, it disrupts the balance between the mind and the body, forcing our bodies to endure unnecessary strain. Overusing it can lead to serious health problems. Yami strongly believed that Itaka's frail health in the future was tied directly to awakening the Sharingan and later, the Mangekyo too soon. The cells in this world were far more active than those in his previous life, speeding up development. However, awakening the Sharingan at 6 or 7 was an extreme burden on the body. It was simply too much for the child to handle. During his time at the Ninja Academy, Yami had observed that Itaka was strong and didn't appear to be sickly. It was likely that when he was young, he didn't grasp the importance of preserving his power and used the Sharingan recklessly. That misuse would have taken its toll as he grew older. Hearing Yami's serious words, Izumi shrank back slightly, curling herself up. Her envy of Itaka quickly faded. Her curiosity soon took over. Yami, how do you know all this? The elders in our clan never spoke of this. They always tell us to unlock our Sharingan as soon as possible. Yami answered calmly, because my old man said so. He's the Hokage's advisor, he knows things. I see, Izumi said, nodding as though everything made sense. After a while, it was time for lunch. Yami took Izumi to Konoha's well-known ramen shop, Ichiraku Ramen. It wasn't quite the famous Otsutsuki Ichiraku, though. That was just a joke. Tuka was an ordinary old man who made ramen. Well, calling him old wasn't entirely accurate. There were still a good 10 years before the main events of the story. He was probably in his 30s at most. But his cooking skills were unparalleled. Both the Shimura and Uchiha clans were regular customers at Ichiraku. Every time, Yami would order a large bowl of shasha ramen with 2 extra croquettes. Izumi, with a smaller appetite, would settle for a regular bowl. This time, however, Yami noticed something interesting. A girl, about their age, was in the kitchen, kneading dough by hand. When adding water, she carefully poured it in, a little at a time, mindful not to overdo it. Tuki, noticing Yami watching his daughter, smiled and introduced her. This is my daughter, Ayam. She doesn't have the talent to become a ninja like you two, so she didn't attend the academy. Instead, she's learning the family trade here. Ayam shyly hid behind her father, nodding at Yami and Izumi. In her thoughts, she couldn't help but think this boy is really handsome. Truth be told, Yami's parents had excellent genes. His mother had a classic oval face. As for his father, don't let Danzo'S current appearance fool you. His battle-worn face was the result of years of injuries. Back in his youth, Danzo had been one of the most handsome men in the nearby villages. He could even make Tsunade and Shizune blush. Naturally, Yami's father had been quite good-looking. With the best features from both parents, it was no surprise that Yami was destined to be a walking disaster once he grew up. After finishing their meal, Yami escorted Izumi back to the Uchiha compound before heading home to reflect on the day's events. Defeating Itaka so decisively had brought him significant benefits, especially since the audience had included elite jonin and high-ranking shinobi. Their impressions of him had resulted in valuable rewards. Host has established a bond with Gecko Hate. Reward, 3 standard Chunin chakras. Host has established a bond with Sarutobi Shinashuk. Reward, Fire Chakra Nature Transformation, excellent. Host has established a bond with Rado Namayashi. Reward, Space Ninjutsu Talent, 1/3. More than 10 people had been present, each contributing first stage rewards. But the most precious reward was undoubtedly the Space Ninjutsu Talent. This was the second fragment of space talent he had obtained. The first fragment, also 1/3, had come as a second stage reward from his bond with Uchiha Izumi. Rado Namayashi. Yami recalled that he was a special jonin in the village, one of the 4th Hokage's personal guards, alongside Shiranui Genma and Iwashi Tatami. The 3 of them were capable of activating the Flying Thunder God formation together, so it made sense that he possessed spatial talent. Still, Yami was surprised to receive a space-related reward so early in their bond. It seemed today had truly been his lucky day. With just one more fragment, he would be able to attempt the Flying Thunder God technique. Without the power of the six paths, very few could threaten a shinobi who had mastered the flying thunder god, unless they had highly specialized countermeasures. Status panel. Name, Shimura Yami. Gender, male. Age, 7 years old. Date of birth, April 1st, year 46, Konoha calendar. Chakra attributes, fire, ultimate, wind, ultimate, earth, genius, water, genius, thunder, genius, yin, genius, yang, genius. Total chakra, 5 cards, 1 card 5 standard Jonin chakras. Chakra control talent, genius. Mastered ninjutsu, 3 basic techniques, proficient, 5 basic nature releases, various levels. Nature transformation, wind release, mastery, fire release, proficient, earth release, proficient, water release, proficient. Special talents, father's expectations, mother's love, senja bloodline, thin, under development, swordsmanship genius, stealth mastery, ninja world darkness, mother-in-law's expectation, space ninjutsu talent, 2/3, Uchiha bloodline, rich. Evaluation, Jonin level with weaknesses, focus on leveraging your strengths in battle. Yami admired his status panel, which he had built up over the last year when suddenly, there was a noise from the gate. Danzo stepped into the courtyard, holding a ninja forehead protector in his hand. Yami, congratulations. Danzo handed the forehead protector to Yami's small hands, his smile unwavering as he entered the room. From today, you're officially a ninja. Danzo encouraged him, while you're not the youngest Chunin, the times have changed. You have the potential to surpass even the youngest Jonin in the village. Keep striving. The youngest Jonin in Konoha's history was Heitake Kakashi, who achieved the rank at just 12 years old. However, Yami had both the talent and lineage to surpass him. Yami held the Konoha forehead protector, pondering where to place it. His forehead wasn't especially wide, so he didn't want to wear it and ruin his appearance. At that moment, the system prompt sounded. Host has forged a bond with Konoha Village, acquired organization status, Genin, and unlocked the special state, leaning against a big tree. Effect, training speed increases by 20%, and chakra recovery speed increases by 20%. This effect strengthens as rank progresses. Congratulations, host, for becoming a Konoha Genin and completing the first stage of Mother's Love. Would you like to claim your reward? Note, rewards expire in 24 hours. Not yet. Silently responding in his mind, Yami looked up at Danzo and grinned. Old man, who cares about being the youngest Jonin? If I'm aiming for something, it should be to become the youngest Hokage. Originally, Yami hadn't been interested in formal affiliation. As the true heir of Konoha, even Jonin would hesitate to act arrogantly around him, lest they incur Danzo's disfavor. But upon receiving the system's notification, Yami re-evaluated his stance. No one in this world could be entirely trusted. Only his own strength would prove truly reliable. Good. Danzo's single eye glinted with excitement. You have ambition, as expected of my grandson. The Hokage title should have always belonged to the Shimura clan. Don't worry, I'll clear the path for you to become Hokage when the time comes. Danzo figured that he had at least 20 more years in him. By then, Yami would be under 30, at the peak of his strength perfect for assuming the Hokage role. Then, Yami would have children and grandchildren. With the right nurturing, perhaps the Hokage position could even become a hereditary title, much like the daimyo. The idea thrilled Danzo, sparking a fire within him. He considered overthrowing Sarutobi Hiruzen at once. But that was still a distant dream. For now, the most pressing matter was planning Yami's next steps. Danzo calmed his excitement, speaking seriously. Now that you're a Genin, Konoha tradition dictates that a Jonin instructor and 2 teammates will be assigned to you. But your situation in Uchiha Itake's is unique. You 2 graduated early, and all teams for this year's graduates have already been formed. I'm not teaming up with Uchiha Itake. Yami immediately shook his head, rejecting the idea. That would be a disaster. In the original timeline, Itake had awakened his Sharingan a year later, after the death of his teammate. Then you won't be with him, Danzo nodded slightly. Let Hiruzen handle Itake. You'll train at Root for a while, and I'll arrange for your Jonin instructor and teammates later. Fine with me. Yami agreed without hesitation. It was the perfect chance to gather rewards from root members. After finalizing the plan, Yami and Danzo had dinner together. Later, under the pretext of needing rest, Yami retired to his room to claim his rewards. It was unfortunate that the system only allowed a 24-hour window for claiming rewards. Otherwise, Yami could have saved up his attributes, maxing them out in one go, perhaps even reaching the limit break threshold. What was the limit break? It essentially meant reaching the level of Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara. Unfortunately, the system was too well crafted to allow such exploitation. Yami had briefly considered staying at the academy until he maxed out all his attributes, but after some thought, he dismissed the idea. He couldn't limit himself based on a single talent effect. The academy had too few people to interact with. It was only by stepping into the real world as a shinobi that he could truly make connections and grow stronger. That's why he chose to graduate now. What did talent matter? With enough effort, he could still reach the limit break level. System, claim rewards. Yami silently spoke in his mind. The system didn't respond. It wasn't particularly intelligent, only able to address basic queries regarding the rules. Instead, the rewards were quietly distributed. A wave of warmth spread through Yami's body. His cell activity and chakra vitality surged to a new level. His total chakra began increasing rapidly. He checked his system panel as the numbers climbed. 5.2 cards. 5.7 cards. 6.2 cards. 6.5 cards. 7 cards. After about 10 minutes, the numbers settled at 9 cards. Meanwhile, his special talents showed an update. His Senju bloodline, thin, under development, had changed to Senju bloodline, normal. However, there was no sign of wood release. Many mistakenly believed that wood release and the Senju bloodline were inherently connected, but in reality, that wasn't the case. The Senju were the Senju, and wood release was something else entirely. Only Senju Hashirama had naturally awakened the wood release over thousands of years. Even the Sage of Six Paths' connection to wood release was debated. It wasn't the Senju who were unique, it was Hashirama himself. No one knew the true source of his extraordinary Kekkei Genkai, the one linked to the God Tree. Suddenly, a sharp pain pierced Yami's eyes. He instinctively covered them with his hands. A warm liquid trickled down his face. When he pulled his hands away, he saw streaks of blood tears staining his arms. And when he opened his eyes again, Yami's pupils had turned a deep, blood-red color. In each eye, a single tomo had appeared. Standing before the mirror, Yami gazed into his reflection, noticing the single tomo in his eyes. He couldn't help but inwardly curse his fate. He had just told Izumi how awakening the Sharingan too early could be detrimental to the body, yet here he was, having awakened it overnight. On his system panel, his Uchiha bloodline had advanced from rich to ultimate. Feeling the steady surge of power within his eyes, Yami suspected that he could naturally develop up to 3 tomo without needing any external triggers. As for the main Jikyo Sharingan, he couldn't be sure, but it would definitely be easier for him to unlock compared to most. "Mother, you really left me with a remarkable gift," Yami muttered to himself. There were brilliant prodigies in the shinobi world, but hard work alone would never get anyone to the top. Take Might Guy, for example. His final attack had been astonishing, but ultimately, it only forced Uchiha Madara to heal himself. Guy had risked his life, and if Naruto hadn't received the Six Paths Yang power, Guy would have died in vain. The shinobi world was vast but also incredibly stifling. To stand at the top, only the bloodlines of Uchiha and Senju truly mattered. And now, Shimura Yami possessed both. For the first time, he felt an unwavering confidence in his future. Closing his Sharingan, Yami returned to bed. A single tomo Sharingan didn't offer much, but it would attract unnecessary attention. Until he solidified his power and removed all potential threats in Konoha, it was better to keep his Sharingan hidden. The Root. The full name, Special Assassination and Tactical Squad, was founded by the second Hokage, Senju Tobirama. In fact, much of Konoha's military and political structure had been created by Senju Tobirama. The so-called first Hokage, Hashirama, had mainly been a tool for war. One led, the other executed. Beyond his forbidden jutsu expertise, Tobirama was a political mastermind, and the formation of was one of his crowning achievements. The Umbu's primary mission was to protect the Hokage and carry out specialized assassination missions. Unlike regular shinobi who followed a genin rightward arrow chinin rightward arrow jonin progression, Anbu operated autonomously, with members always masked, concealing their identities. However, the true purpose of Anbu was to centralize power. They were an elite force reporting directly to the Hokage, bypassing the chain of command of other high-ranking shinobi. Essentially, Anbu agents had the authority to kill first and report later, answering only to the Hokage. However, a great system meant nothing if the person in charge was inept. Under Sarutobi Hiruzen, everything had started to decay. Technically, Shimura Danzo'S route was a subdivision of Anbu, a single unit within its ranks. But in reality, due to Hiruzen's blind trust in Danzo, and Danzo'S insatiable ambition, route had grown into a separate entity, effectively a second Anbu. Officially, the Anbu was composed of 1 captain, 1 vice captain, 4 battalions, each led by a battalion commander. 16 Anbu per battalion, further divided into 4 squads per battalion, each squad consisting of 1 captain plus 3 members. Thus, the total number of official Anbu members was around 100. On paper, route was just one brigade within Anbu, meaning it should only consist of about 20 members. But in reality, according to Yami's knowledge, route had more than 50 operatives, a force nearly equivalent to the entire Anbu division. The depth of Danzo'S unchecked power under Hiruzen was chilling. Unlike the regular Anbu, route's training and recruitment process was far more brutal, ensuring that their operatives were far superior in combat than typical Anbu members. Route base. Wearing his forehead protector on his waist, Yami arrived at the entrance of the route base, an underground complex hidden deep beneath Konoha. He couldn't help but sigh. This route leader has a better setup than the Hokage himself. What's the old man even fighting for? Stepping forward, Yami's figure disappeared into the darkness. Navigating the labyrinthine tunnels, he eventually arrived at a large, silent hall. The silence was so thick it almost felt suffocating. A shinobi in a red mask stood at the center, with 3 subordinates lined up behind him. Upon Yami's arrival, the red-masked shinobi spoke in a detached tone. Lord Yami, I am the captain of Route's 2nd squad. Codename, Owl. The commander has tasked me with overseeing your first lesson in Route. And the lesson is simple: killing. For Route shinobi, killing was the most fundamental aspect of their training. Yami was unfazed by their lack of emotion. Route operatives were essentially walking corpses, so their cold demeanor was to be expected. He simply nodded. You arrange it. I'll do it. Although Yami had the system at his disposal, he had never killed before, not even a chicken, let alone a person. No matter how powerful he was, his mentality remained his weakness. The battlefield was not a game of raw stats. Even a genin could kill a jonin, or even a kage, with a well-timed strike. Yami understood that this was a hurdle he had to overcome. And truthfully, the old man's request wasn't wrong. Still, he set one condition. I'll say this in advance, I will only kill those who deserve to die. If I believe they don't deserve death, I won't kill them. The red-masked owl remained stoic. For Route, ninjas are merely tools, and all mission targets are valid for elimination. But you are different, Lord Yami. You have autonomy. The squad left Konoha, heading northwest. At their pace, they soon arrived at a small village, about 100 kilometers away. The Land of Fire, being the most powerful nation, rarely faced external threats, maintaining general stability. But beneath the surface, corruption thrived. Bandits, crime lords, rogue ninjas finding scum in any given village was a simple task. On the way, Owl had already briefed Yami on the mission. Their target was a wealthy landlord who had amassed his fortune through exploitative lending, ruining dozens of families and seizing their land. Protected by 2 rogue ninjas, he wasn't particularly dangerous, just 2 chunin-level guards. This greedy man had essentially become Route's personal cash machine, and now he was set to become Yami's first kill. Considering Yami's performance against Uchiha Itachi, eliminating these weaklings would be no challenge. Perched atop a large tree overlooking the mansion courtyard, Owl's cold voice rang out. Lord Yami, you may begin. Bang. The wooden door shattered into pieces, debris flying in all directions. Inside, a group of thugs who had been drinking and playing cards froze, their gazes snapping toward the entrance. As the dust settled, a small figure stepped inside, carrying a sword that was nearly as tall as himself. Good evening, Yami greeted them with a childlike smile, his tone light and almost playful. I'm here to escort you somewhere. But before I do, mind telling me your name? Consider this a free service from me. A brief silence hung in the air. Then, laughter erupted. A burly man stepped forward, slapping his knee as he laughed so hard, he nearly toppled over. Ha! Where did this little brat come from? He sneered. He actually thinks he can kill someone? I'm standing right here, kid. Go ahead, try me. Another thug laughed, dismissing him with a wave. Little punk, have you ever seen blood? Go home. Had an adult ninja entered, they would have thought twice. But a 6 or 7-year-old. Even if he were a ninja, what harm could he do? Yami calmly repeated his question. What's your name? The burly man smirked, puffing out his chest. Ha! The name's Yosuji Taro, kid. Slice. One clean downward slash. A thin red line appeared across the man's forehead, splitting down his nose. Then, his entire body was cleaved in half. He crumpled to the floor with a sickening thud, his insides spilling out. Tisk. Yami instinctively frowned. The mental shock of his first kill wasn't as severe as he had imagined, but the sight of blood and the stench of guts made his stomach churn. For a while, he might not be able to stomach meat. At that moment, the system notification rang. Host has formed a life and death bond with Yosuji Taro. Stage 3 reward granted, plus 0.1 standard genin chakra, minor physical enhancement. Perfect. His theory had been correct. The bond system activated with emotional triggers. And what emotion could be stronger than death? Life and death bond, fitting. He lives, they die. A fair trade. For a moment, the room was stunned into silence. Then, the remaining thugs snapped out of their shock, grabbing their weapons and charging at him with enraged shouts. Though civilians feared ninjas, these men were trained fighters. They weren't weaklings, with 2 of them being rogue Chunin-level ninjas. They thought Yosuji Taro had died from a surprise attack, not realizing the child was actually powerful. They had no idea what they were facing. Yami didn't even bother to dodge. He met them head-on. Clang. A sword swung at him. It shattered on impact. In the next instant, Yami's blade cut through the attacker's legs, sending him crashing to the ground, screaming. Outside, perched on a rooftop, Owl silently listened to the screams from inside. His expression remained unchanged. The only thing that mildly intrigued him was Yami's peculiar habit. Before killing someone, Yami insisted on knowing their name. And if they refused, he would torture them before granting death. A rather unique trait. 3 minutes later, Shimura Yami stepped out of the house. The screams had finally ceased. Lord Yami, are you unharmed? Owl asked. It wasn't as bad as I expected, Yami replied, shaking his head slightly. But I'll need more practice to get used to it. Owl gave a small nod. Understood. Danzo-sama has made ample resources available for your training. If you don't need rest, we can proceed to the next target immediately. Let's go. Yami exhaled deeply, sheathing his sword. The sooner he finished this, the sooner he could return home and enjoy the comfort of his own bed. Please wait a moment, Owl said. We still need to recover assets. The Root subordinates sprang into action. Root wasn't just effective at killing, they were also skilled at looting. In 10 minutes, they had gathered all the valuable items in the mansion: cash, gold, silver, jewelry, and property deeds. Shimura Yami flipped through the documents and banknotes, nodding in approval. Not bad, this guy was rich. The crime lord had 20 million ryo in cash, not even counting his land. Then, a particular note caught his eye. Yami stopped flipping and picked it up. Princess Tsunade, borrowed 8 million ryo due to a gambling shortage. I will repay it before January 1st, year 54 of the Konoha calendar. If overdue, monthly interest will increase by 1%. A sly smile appeared on his face. Tsunade's IOU. Folding the IOU neatly, Yami tucked it away. Then, sealing 3 million ryo into a storage scroll, he turned to Owl. The rest is yours. Do what you will with it. Owl remained silent. Although he was technically the leader, Yami's authority in Root was second only to Danzo. He couldn't oppose Yami's decisions, only report them. 1 month later. For the next few weeks, Yami was either killing or preparing to kill. His targets ranged from common thugs, bandits, and corrupt noblemen in the Land of Fire. As his Kusanagi blade became soaked in blood, his growth accelerated. Not just in power but also in mentality. He no longer hesitated. Regardless of age or status, he had learned to strike without mercy. Finally, after eliminating a corrupt real estate tycoon who had swindled Danzo'S resources, Owl called off the mission. Lord Yami, your training is complete. From here, you will proceed to poison and trap training, under the captain of the first squad. Is it over? Yami's innocent smile was almost unbelievable, given how many lives he had taken in just 1 month. Speaking of which, Owl. Yami slowly wiped his palm with a handkerchief. We've known each other for a while now, but I still don't know your real name. Owl's cold voice responded. Root operatives have no need for names, only code names. Yami smirked. I'm ordering you as your superior, tell me. A long silence. Then, reluctantly, Owl spoke. Uzuki Shinji. Konoha. While Yami was away for over a month, a significant event took place. Orochimaru, once a loyal disciple of the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, and the last remaining member of the legendary Sunin, was discovered to have been conducting forbidden human experiments. These experiments involved using innocent villagers to test a dangerous and prohibited technique. When the third Hokage led an Umbu team to apprehend him, Orochimaru escaped from the village, earning the title of the most notorious rogue ninja since Konoha's founding. The news shook the village, and Hiruzen's reputation took a major blow. Hokage building, Hokage's office. A tense atmosphere filled the room as Hiruzen glared at Danzo, who remained calm and composed. Though Danzo had stayed out of the incident as though it had nothing to do with him, Hiruzen could sense his influence behind it. The familiar scent of manipulation was unmistakable. Danzo, what exactly are you playing at? Are you trying to push Konoha to the brink by forcing Orochimaru out? Hiruzen's voice was sharp as he adjusted his Hokage hat. Konoha was in a vulnerable state. The White Fang had taken his own life, the fourth Hokage was dead, and the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki was still a child. 2 of the Sunin were gone, leaving only Orochimaru. At such a critical juncture, Danzo had forced Orochimaru's departure, directly challenging Hiruzen's authority. Did I do something wrong? Danzo responded, not even attempting to deny the accusation. Should I have done nothing while Orochimaru used the villagers for his twisted experiments? Hiruzen's face turned crimson, but he struggled to find words to refute him. Did he not know what his former apprentice was up to? Of course, he did. Since Orochimaru lost the Hokage succession to Minato, he had become more withdrawn from village matters. Each time they met, Hiruzen could feel Orochimaru slipping away from humanity. But Hiruzen had ignored it, hoping Orochimaru would come to his senses once his research was complete. Now, he couldn't admit this openly. Any hint of condoning Orochimaru's actions would put his position as Hokage at risk. I don't need you making decisions for me, Danzo, Hiruzen stated with finality. I am the Hokage. You'll regret this, Hiruzen. With a swift turn, Danzo left, a satisfied smirk on his face. Forcing Orochimaru out had shaken Hiruzen's authority. It exposed his weaknesses and set the stage for Danzo's next move. Yami was growing stronger, and Danzo couldn't afford to sit idly by. If Yami reached his full potential before Danzo ascended to Hokage, how could he ensure his own rise to power? Without hesitation, Danzo had sacrificed Orochimaru, his longtime ally. Of course, Danzo had made sure to offer Orochimaru something in return: 100 ninja test subjects. With this assurance, Orochimaru refrained from seeking vengeance, and their alliance remained intact. However, acquiring these subjects was no easy task. Due to the recent turmoil, Konoha couldn't provide them. Yamanaka. A ninja appeared instantly, kneeling. Take the 3rd and 4th squadrons to the Land of Water. Capture as many as you can alive. Understood. With that, the root ninja vanished. When Yami returned to Konoha, the village was still abuzz about Orochimaru's defection and the grim revelations of his experiments. At the root base, Danzo proudly recounted his plans. Grandfather, aren't you worried that other nations will catch wind of this and take action? Yami asked, his voice tinged with frustration. And weren't you on good terms with Orochimaru? He even gave me a sword. Betraying him like this seems excessive. Danzo gave him a knowing sidelong glance. You think I didn't consider that? He replied gruffly. The 5 great nations are too weak to start a new conflict. They need time to recover. Orochimaru's defection won't tip the balance of power. Hiruzen deceives himself. He never had the courage to deal with Orochimaru properly. Danzo's tone then turned more serious. Yami, remember this, there are no true friends in this world. Only interests that remain constant. As long as it benefits me and protects Konoha, I wouldn't hesitate to betray even Hiruzen himself. What about me? Yami asked, meeting his gaze directly. If the rewards were great enough, would you betray me too? Danzo hesitated, but quickly shook his head. No. You and the village are my most valued interests. Yami smiled, his eyes glinting. You old schemer. Let's put that aside. I brought back plenty of supplies this time. Danzo's plan ultimately didn't unfold as he had hoped. Though Hiruzen's reputation had been damaged, he had underestimated the power of loyalty. Soon after Orochimaru's departure, a hero returned to Konoha. Konoha, a certain rooftop. On top of a women's bathhouse, Jiraiya's brow furrowed in concern. Old man, what happened with Orochimaru? If not for the telescope in his hands and their current setting, the situation might have felt more urgent. He lost his way, Hiruzen said wearily, his voice tinged with regret. Jiraiya's face softened as he remembered their younger days. Of course. That stubborn snake wanted to learn every jutsu in the world. As if that were even possible. Yes. But he lost himself in the pursuit of power, Hiruzen sighed. You've grown up now. I can't control you anymore. Jiraiya, help this old man. Konoha needs you. Jiraiya remained silent for a moment, his eyes locked onto Hiruzen's. 1 year. I'll stay for 1 year, Jiraiya finally said. After that, I'll bring him back to you. For the first time in days, a small smile appeared on Hiruzen's face. All right. Jiraiya made a grand return to Konoha, swiftly aiding Hiruzen in stabilizing the situation. His influence was immense, not just as the 3rd Hokage's former disciple but also as the 4th Hokage's mentor, a hero cherished by many. With the Umbu's help, the unrest within the village was quickly quelled, allowing the village to resume its recovery. However, Danzo was furious, unleashing his frustration by hurling objects in his office. But for Yami, none of this was significant. Upon his return, the first thing he did was grant himself a half-month break. From Izumi, he learned that Itaki had joined a genin team and was performing basic missions like any other genin. At this moment, Yami wasn't interested in Uchiha Itaki. The 3rd phase rewards required significant emotional shifts, and Itaki wasn't ready for that. It was better to let him develop further. When the time came to use Sasuke against him, Yami would easily crush him. After his break, Yami resumed his training. This time, his instructor was Abarame Seiya, the head of the 1st Root Battalion and father of Abarame Seiji. The Abarame clan was known for its proficiency in insect control, but they also specialized in poisons. Many insects naturally had venom, and cultivating them required extensive research into toxins. Yami didn't need to create poisons, just understanding their types and methods was sufficient. As for detoxification, that was a different matter. Well, if it isn't Director Nono. It's been a while. Yami smiled at Yakushi Nono standing before him. In the past, he frequently visited the orphanage to bring warmth to the children. After several visits, most bonds had progressed to the 2nd stage, so he reduced his visits. However, he made sure to send food and necessities to the orphanage every week. Lord Yami, this is rude. You may refer to me by my codename, Maiko. Nono looked uncomfortable. Nothing was worse than having her identity as a root agent exposed to someone she knew. Oh. So you're the famous, wandering Maiko. Yami said, feigning realization. Host and Yakushi Nono have reached the 2nd stage of the bond. Reward, medical ninjutsu talent. Yami was momentarily surprised. All he had done was mention a name, and that triggered an emotional response strong enough to progress the bond. Lord Yami, that's just a rumor. Please don't bring up that title, Nono forced a smile, looking more pained than amused. Let's begin the lesson. Yami nodded and quickly focused on his studies. In the ninja world, especially in Konoha, the greatest medical ninja was undeniably Princess Tsunade. Her contributions had made Konoha the leading force in medical ninjutsu among the 5 great nations. Among Konoha's medical specialists, Nono ranked high, just below Tsunade. Yami wasn't going to waste the opportunity to learn from such a skilled teacher. In addition to detoxification, he also studied medical ninjutsu under Nono. For most, mastering medical ninjutsu was difficult due to poor chakra control and the necessity for yang-based chakra, which required specific training. Neither of these posed a problem for Yami. Thanks to his control over chakra and a trace of senja blood, his vitality was boundless. His progress was so fast that Nono was left in awe. In just a few weeks, he had absorbed all her medical knowledge and even mastered some of her advanced techniques. Lord Yami, at this rate, only Tsunade-sama could be your teacher, Nono sighed. Forget it. Yami set down the fish he had just revived and killed again. With my old man's ties to Tsunade, there's no way she'd take me on. Nono fell silent. Danzo'S reputation was indeed something else. While common ninjas respected and feared him, Tsunade was openly hostile toward him. Back in the day, she would often argue with him, slamming tables during their heated exchanges. But Nono couldn't speak on such matters. Lord Yami, there's nothing more I can teach you, she bowed slightly. If you keep studying independently, you'll soon be on par with Tsunade-sama, even without becoming her disciple. If there's nothing else, I'll now attend to my other assignments for Lord Danzo. Yami walked through the root base and reached the deepest section of the underground facility. He pushed open the door to Danzo's office and immediately inquired. Old man, I've finished all the training you gave me. Have you made any progress on assigning my teammates? It had been almost 3 months since he became a genin, and he still didn't have a team. How was he supposed to rise through the ranks, get promoted, and become the youngest jonin and Hokage if this kept up? The door opened, and Danzo initially scowled but relaxed when he saw Yami. He patiently explained. There are some possibilities. Your teammates and jonin leader should be confirmed within a week at most. A whole week. Yami was frustrated. Can't you just pick a few people from Root? Absolutely not, Danzo replied firmly. Root agents operate in the shadows. You must be in the light and follow the official promotion process. Only then will you build the reputation you need. Rest for now. You've been working hard, Danzo added with rare approval. Yami's talent and resolve had far exceeded his expectations. Any man would be proud to have such a descendant. Fine. I'll go hang out with Izumi, Yami muttered, accepting his fate. Danzo, who had just been feeling relieved, immediately frowned. Can't you stay away from that Uchiha girl? This was the one thing he disapproved of regarding Yami. The cursed Uchiha. As Yami walked away, he casually called back. I'll hang out with whoever I want. If you don't like it, just have another grandson. You ungrateful brat. Danzo's furious roar echoed through the office, but there was nothing he could do about Yami. What could he do? Have another grandson? Danzo kept his word. A week flew by in an instant, and as the deadline approached, he had someone send word to Yami that his teammates and jonin leader were ready. They were instructed to gather at Training Ground 47 at 8 a.m. the next morning. Intrigued, Yami arrived at Training Ground 47 promptly the next day. Though he was on time, 3 figures were already there, a man and 2 women. The man had no visible pupils, his eyes completely white, akin to someone suffering from severe cataracts. The 2 women were strikingly different in appearance, one with black hair, the other with purple, but both shared a common trait: they were undeniably beautiful. Yami's expression shifted slightly. These 3 were all familiar faces. The moment the man saw Yami, he quickly deduced that this must be their final teammate. He smiled, but with his serious demeanor and blank white eyes, the smile looked more eerie than friendly. You must be Shimura Yami, correct? I'm Hyuga Hizashi, your jonin leader. These 2 are your future teammates. Hello, Hizashi-sensei. Host has established a master-disciple bond with Hyuga Hizashi. Reward: enhanced physical fitness. Yami paid no attention to the system prompt and instead recalled what he knew about Hyuga Hizashi. Hyuga Hizashi, brother to the head of the Hyuga clan, Hyuga Hayashi. Born 15 minutes after Hayashi, Hizashi was relegated to the branch family and branded with the caged bird seal. Though he had little resentment toward his position because of his relationship with Hayashi, everything changed when his son, Hyuga Neji, was born. From that point on, Hisashi's perspective shifted. He realized that his son's fate had already been sealed by the system, trapped in a cycle that would never allow his descendants to escape. Konoha had many tragic figures, and Hisashi and Neji were among the most notable. Especially Neji. He was the only one among the 12 who died in the Fourth Great Ninja War, and arguably the strongest of them, outside of the main protagonists. Tisk. Now that we're all here, let's introduce ourselves. It's a tradition to get to know each other, helping us form better bonds and trust each other, Hisashi stated, not realizing that Yami was already pondering his and Neji's tragic futures. He stuck to standard procedure. I'll go first, Hisashi said casually, not putting on any airs despite being a jonin. My name is Hyuga Hisashi. I'm 34 years old, a jonin, and a member of the Hyuga branch family. When he mentioned his branch status, his eyes dimmed for a moment, before returning to their usual state. I specialize in reconnaissance using the Byakugan and close quarters combat with gentle fist. I don't have many long-range techniques, so I prefer close-range confrontations. My favorite food is sukiyaki, and I dislike fried cutlass fish. As for my dream. Hisashi paused with a self-deprecating chuckle. I'm too old for dreams. I just want to live out my days in peace. All right, your turn, he said, looking at the black-haired girl. Kurane, go ahead. The girl nodded slightly and introduced herself clearly. My name is Yui Kurane. I'm 15, a chunin from Konoha. I specialize in genjutsu, though my taijutsu and ninjutsu are average. But I've managed to reach chunin rank in both. My favorite food is shaku and wasabi octopus. I dislike cake. My dream is to become Konoha's foremost genjutsu master. Very good, Hisashi nodded approvingly. Your turn, Yojeo. The purple-haired girl spoke in a flat, emotionless tone. My name is Uzuki Yojeo. I'm 14 years old, a chunin of Konoha. I specialize in Konoha-style kenjutsu and taijutsu, preferring close combat. My favorite food is sakura mochi, and I don't have many dislikes. I can eat anything. As for my dream. For the first time, a flicker of ambition appeared on her usually neutral face. I want to become the strongest swordsman in Konoha. Then work hard, Hisashi said with a small smile. I've heard a lot about your father's swordsmanship. It was remarkable. It's a shame. Hisashi's voice trailed off, and he shook his head regretfully. Yojeo's father had been a jonin from the Moonlight clan who died on the battlefield near the Land of Earth. When his body was returned, only half of it remained. The ambition in Yojeo's eyes faded as the atmosphere became tense. All right, Yami, you're last, Hisashi said, quickly changing the subject. Kurane and Yojeo turned their attention to him. They had heard of Shimura Yami, Danzo'S grandson and a prodigy who had graduated at the age of 7. His name was well known in Konoha. However, they still harbored some doubts, perhaps even resentment. Even if he was a genius, they were all chunin. Why was such a young child assigned to their team? But seeing Yami in person made a difference. His childlike appearance softened their harsh judgments, and neither girl openly showed hostility. Under their watchful gazes, Yami began his introduction. My name is Shimura Yami, grandson of Hokage advisor Shimura Danzo. He emphasized the title, Hokage advisor. All three scowled slightly. Afraid people might not know you're a second-generation elite? Ignoring their reactions, Yami continued. I'm 7 years old, a genin from Konoha. I excel in both close combat and long-range techniques. I specialize in ninjutsu and taijutsu. Oh, and I'm also a medical ninja, he added. He then turned to Yojeo. My strongest skill is swordsmanship, so don't expect to become the strongest swordsman in Konoha. You might want to reconsider your goal. Yojeo's expression twitched. I like many types of food. I dislike mustard, cabbage, bitter melon, sweet potatoes. Yami continued listing his dislikes, making Hisashi and the others grow numb. How long is this list? Finally, Yami clenched his fist and stated firmly. My goal is to forge strong bonds with everyone in the ninja world. A half-minute of silence followed. It wasn't that they had nothing to say, but rather, there were so many things they could criticize that they didn't know where to start. Eventually, Yojeo broke the silence. You claim to be the best at swordsmanship. You also say you excel in everything? Even the Hokage wouldn't boast like that. That just means I'm better than the old man, Yami replied coolly. I'm simply stating facts. If you don't like it, that's your problem. Are you slandering the Hokage? Yojeo demanded. Seeing the argument start to escalate, Hisashi stepped in between them. Alright, enough. Yami is a talented shinobi, but what he said was a bit too bold. How about this, Hisashi suggested. Let's conduct an evaluation to properly assess his abilities. Training Ground 47. Hisashi and Kurane positioned themselves at the edge of the field, giving Yami and Yojeo space to prepare for their match. Normally, the first test after graduation involved something like the bell test. However, with both of Yami's teammates already being Chunin, such a test would hold no real value. And as for Yami, even if he did fail, would they really send him back to the academy? Would they dare risk having him show up at night for a chat? Thus, the test turned into a round-robin sparring session, where everyone was required to fight the others once. The first battle was between Uzuki Yojeo and Shimura Yami. Stop. No explosive tags or poison. Hisashi called out from the sidelines. Yami glanced toward him. He had a feeling Hisashi had researched him, which explained his specific instructions. How about we settle this with just swordsmanship? Yami suggested. Fine with me. Yojeo shifted into a defensive stance, silently challenging Yami to make the first move. Without hesitation, Yami unsheathed his sword. The moment his hand gripped the hilt, Yojeo could sense a change. Before he drew the blade, he had just seemed like a typical, cute child. But as soon as he unsheathed the sword, he became an extension of the weapon itself, exuding a lethal aura. And then, there was the sword. Kusanagi? Yojeo asked in surprise. Yep, Yami replied casually. My grandfather gave it to me for my 6th birthday. He got it from Orochimaru. A stab of jealousy ran through Yojeo. The Kusanagi sword, as a 6th birthday gift. It was enough to make any swordsman envy him. Hope your sword skills are as impressive as the sword itself, Yojeo said, maintaining her composure. Despite her words, her stance subtly shifted. Before, she had been on the defensive, but with the Kusanagi now in play, she knew this would be no ordinary fight. Here I come, Yami said, charging forward. His speed was fast but not quite on the level of body flicker technique. This was a sword duel, he wasn't going to use any unfair advantages. Their blades clashed, and the sound of metal ringing filled the air. Their figures danced across the training ground, exchanging strikes that sent sparks flying with each collision. Ding! 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 Yojeo's heart raced as she dug her feet into the ground and pushed herself backward. But Yami didn't relent. His blade pursued her relentlessly, forcing her into increasingly awkward positions. Every time she tried to counterattack, he anticipated her moves, striking where she was weakest and forcing her to adapt. Is he an Uchiha? She felt like she was up against someone with the Sharingan. On the sidelines, Kurane watched in awe. So this is the genius. She whispered, amazed. He's keeping up with Yojeo after just graduating, he's like Kakashi. Yami's performance reminded her of her old classmate Kakashi, a prodigy famed for his sword skills. Tying. Hisashi muttered, his face impassive. This isn't a tie. With his superior vision, Hisashi could clearly see how the fight was going. And it wasn't just a loss, it was worse. Clang. The clash of blades rang through the air. Suddenly, Yami's strength surged. A gust of wind exploded outward, sending Yojeo skidding back more than 10 meters before she managed to regain her footing. While there was an obvious gap in physical strength after all, he was only 7. His flawless chakra control allowed him to generate explosive bursts of power. It was similar to Tsunade's superhuman strength, but not quite as overwhelming. Yami shook his head slightly. Konoharayu Kenjutsu is solid, but it's too basic. The ceiling is far too low. Konoha-style swordsmanship was just the foundation. Anyone could learn it, and even the Academy's Taijutsu was built on the same principles. Yojeo's fundamentals were strong, but her moves were rigid, and her intentions too obvious. I haven't lost yet, Yojeo gritted out. Her frustration was palpable. Yami's evaluation of her was casual, but it only made her more determined. She wasn't about to let him write her off that easily. She charged forward. Her shoulders tensed, and 2 shadow clones split off from her body. The 3 Yojeo attacked from 3 different angles above, left, and right. Konoharu, Sangetsu no Mai. Dance of the 3 Moons. Yami smirked. His eyes locked onto the clone on the left. A flash of silver cut through the air. The 2 other clones evaporated in a puff of smoke. When Yojeo blinked, Yami's kusanagi was pressed against her throat. A step further, and she would have been down. But Yami withdrew his blade. You tried to use a technique you haven't mastered. He raised an eyebrow. How did you figure out which one was real? Yojeo asked, stunned. Your shadow clone technique is sloppy. The clones moved slower than the real you. The real one rushed ahead by half a step. Plus, your breathing was heavier than the rest. Yami gave her a pointed look. If I couldn't see through that, I wouldn't be fit to be a ninja. Yojeo's face flushed with embarrassment. She had thought she had perfected the technique, but now she realized just how flawed it was. All right, that's enough, Hisashi called, stepping forward to cut the tension. If Yami kept going, someone would lose their confidence for good. Yojeo stepped aside, defeated. Beaten by a 7-year-old in a sword fight. She was far from pleased with herself. Kurane, you're up next. Time to spar with Yami. Ah? Oh okay. Kurane stammered. She moved to the center, nerves making her stomach twist. Her heart raced. What should I do? I'm scared. Am I going to be cut down instantly? But not wanting to look too pathetic, Kurane decided to take the initiative. Half a minute later, Kurane was sprawled on the ground, a bit of drool hanging from the corner of her mouth as she giggled foolishly. So many mustard octopuses. Hee hee, so much sake. Pfft. Seeing Kurane like this, Yojeo, who had been sulking just moments ago, suddenly felt a lot better and couldn't help but laugh. Kurane's genjutsu had been reflected back at her. Even though she had lost in her area of expertise, she had still lasted a full 2 minutes. In comparison, Yojeo now felt her performance hadn't been that bad. Hisashi glanced at Kurane and sighed in exasperation. Yami, break the illusion. You've won. Oh. Yami responded casually, placing 2 fingers on Kurane's forehead. Soon, her chakra flow returned to normal, and the illusion faded away. Kurane quickly realized what had just happened. Her face flushed red as she glared at Yami with a mixture of annoyance and embarrassment. You really had to break my illusion like that. Having her genjutsu reflected was the worst possible way to lose. It meant her opponent was either far superior in illusion mastery or had mental strength so overwhelming that the genjutsu didn't even affect them. Either way, it was humiliating. It was the shinobi equivalent of being thoroughly beaten in a game. Kurane wished she could disappear into the ground. If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have even tried to use genjutsu. She should have just fought him directly with Kunao. Little kid. Yami blinked. That was the first time someone had called him that. He glanced down at himself and nodded thoughtfully. Well, she wasn't wrong. All right, I'll keep that in mind next time, Yami said casually. But who told you to have such weak mental defenses? You walked right into my illusion with no resistance at all. You. Kurane huffed, her frustration growing. She reached out to pinch Yami's cheek, but he effortlessly dodged. Sensei, look at him. Seeing she couldn't even vent her frustration properly, Kurane decided to go straight to Hisashi. Hisashi, however, had no intention of stepping into this. All right, Yami is right, he said, his voice serious. Kurane, you let your guard down too much. Never underestimate your opponent, understand? Inwardly, though, Hisashi was screaming. You think I'd dare help you deal with Yami? What if I get invited to Root's base for a friendly chat tonight? Faced with Hisashi's reprimand, Kurane didn't dare argue. She simply glared at Yami with her large eyes. Yami wasn't fazed. He glared right back. What year is this? Who still acts like that? If anyone should be admired, it's me. You dare glare at me? Kurane let out a small laugh instead of getting angrier. This little guy, he was far more interesting than that stuffy Asuma. Host has established a teammate bond with Uzuki Yojeo. Reward, 1 standard Chunin Chakra unit. Host has established a teammate bond with Ui Kurane. Reward, 1 standard Chunin Chakra unit. As Yami and Hisashi walked to the sidelines, the system's notifications appeared. Looking at the rewards, Yami wasn't surprised. Despite how attractive Kurane and Yojeo were, their strength still left much to be desired. Neither had any unique bloodlines or exceptional abilities. This system didn't care about looks or background, only talent. Oh well. Might as well enjoy the show. Watching girls fight is always fun. Hisashi, overhearing Yami's quiet muttering, nearly stumbled. Thinking back to what he had heard about Danzo, he found it hard to believe. How could someone as stoic and calculating as Shimura Danzo have a grandson like this? The personality gap was astounding. Back on the field, the battle between Yojeo and Kurane had begun. There was no hair pulling. Both kunoichi were fighting seriously, determined to prove that it wasn't them who were weak, it was just that Yami was too strong. Kurane tried to close in on Yojeo, waiting for the perfect moment to cast a genjutsu. But illusions were most effective when used as an ambush. Now that Yojeo was aware of Kurane's specialty, she remained alert, making it harder for genjutsu to land. Unless you had a Sharingan, which allowed you to cast illusions with a glance, it was tough to get a solid hit. Unfortunately, Kurane didn't have such an ability. So, she lost. Yojeo let out a relieved sigh. At least she wasn't the last one left on the team. Kurane wasn't too upset. She knew the limitations of genjutsu in direct combat. The two kunoichi returned to Hisashi and Yami. Good job, everyone, Hisashi said, smiling. Taijutsu, genjutsu, ninjutsu, our team is well balanced. No major weaknesses. A team with 3 Chunin and 1 Jonin was already an elite squad. Even in battle, they would be formidable. As a reward for our team coming together, dinner's on me tonight, Hisashi announced. Let's go and have a nice meal. Really? Awesome. Thank you, sensei. Kurane and Yojeo beamed with excitement. Hisashi smiled. All right, let's go to the barbecue place. Yami suddenly interrupted with the enthusiasm of a child. Teacher Hisashi is a Jonin, after all. A regular meal wouldn't be appropriate for his status. Hisashi felt a chill run down his spine. Wait a minute. Before he could finish, Kurane and Yojeo's eyes lit up. Really? Sensei, I haven't had barbecue in ages. Same here. The last time I had it was, forever ago. 3 pairs of eager eyes locked onto him. Hisashi's refusal got stuck in his throat. For the sake of his dignity as a team leader, he had no choice but to force a smile. Yes, that was my plan all along. Yami just beat me to it. Long live Hisashi-sensei. Sensei, you're the best. Laughter and cheers echoed across Training Ground 47. The faint sigh that followed, however, was quietly ignored by everyone. Hisashi trailed behind the group, watching Yami and Kurane banter playfully. He couldn't help but shake his head, both amused and exasperated. This kid is ruthless. The most popular barbecue joint in Konoha is Yakiniku-Q. There's a rumor floating around that the Akimichi clan has a stake in the place, but it's never been confirmed. Yami, however, knows this rumor is true. The Akimichi clan's special techniques demand an immense amount of energy, which means they rely on nutrient-dense food to maintain their strength. One Akimichi could easily consume the equivalent of 5 shinobi from other clans. If they only depended on their ninja wages, many of them would likely go hungry. So, it's no surprise they run a business to keep the clan financially stable. Yakiniku-Q's prices are high even for shinobi. Even the Akimichi clan members themselves have to pay, it's not like they eat there for free. It's no wonder Koji always seems so thrilled when he comes to this place, while Asuma looks so drained. If the Hokage's son has trouble affording it, how does Hisashi manage? Though he's an experienced Jonin, Hisashi doesn't take on many missions. His primary role in the Hyuga clan is protecting the main family, which means a large portion of his mission rewards go directly to them. So, Hisashi's finances are somewhat modest. When he saw Yami order 20 servings of marinated beef with special sauce, Hisashi nearly passed out. Why Yami? Hisashi stuttered. 20 servings is a lot. Are we really going to finish all of that? Maybe we should start with half. Don't worry, Hisashi-sensei, Yami said with a bright, confident grin. I've got a huge appetite, and I skipped breakfast. The 20 plates are for me alone. You're free to order whatever you want. Don't hold back. Who's holding back for you? Fortunately, the two girls remained calm. They each ordered just 3 plates of barbecue, along with some side dishes. Soon after, the waiter brought their food. There was so much that they had to bring a serving cart. Realizing the situation, Hisashi accepted his fate and decided not to dwell on the price. He even ordered a bottle of sake for himself. Kurane, Yojeo, do you want anything? I'll have shaku. Kurane said, grinning. Yojeo, however, shook her head. I'll stick to milk, just like Yami. Technically, shinobi were expected to avoid 3 things: alcohol, indulgence, and greed. And strictly speaking, neither Kurane nor Yojeo was considered an adult yet. But being a shinobi was a high-stakes job. The last major war had just ended, and no one knew what the future held. They earned money, but also lived with constant tension. Everyone needed an escape. Out of the 3 prohibitions, alcohol was the least damaging provided it wasn't consumed on a mission. And honestly, if kids barely older than toddlers could be sent to war, what was the harm in having a drink now and then? The drinks arrived, and the 4 of them clinked their glasses. Kurane even nudged her glass toward Yami, giving him a playful look. Her expression seemed to say, "You're still just a kid, want your older sister to look after you." Yami didn't even acknowledge her, instead shoving 2 slices of beef into his mouth. What's wrong with being small? He'd grow up eventually. Better to eat now and order more later, the meat is where the money's at. He was here for profit, not just to relax. Kurane wasn't pleased. She made a note of this and turned to talk with Yojeo and Hisashi, ignoring Yami with a huff. As the conversation carried on, Hisashi relaxed, acting more like a friendly neighbor than a strict teacher, sharing stories from his time as a shinobi. The discussion inevitably turned to Niji Hyuga, Hisashi's young son. Every time Niji's name was mentioned, Hisashi's face lit up with a smile. Eventually, Hisashi's gaze shifted toward Yami, who was silently focusing on his meal. With a hint of sadness, he sighed. I'd be content if Niji even had half of Yami's talent in the future. Kurane quickly reassured him, "Don't worry, sensei. Niji will definitely outshine this guy one day." "I'm not sure about surpassing me," Yami said between bites of beef, "but he'll definitely be better than you." Kurane gritted her teeth in frustration. "You little brat. Just wait until you are old enough to drink, I'll get you so drunk you'll regret everything." Yami didn't seem to care. He kept eating. Hisashi, looking anxious, said, "Yami, please have mercy. If you keep eating like this, I'll end up washing the dishes." Half an hour later, Hisashi stared at the 100,000 Ryo bill in disbelief. This was almost the reward for a B-rank mission. And a B-rank mission's reward is split among 4 people. The sky is falling. Niji, if you don't grow up strong, don't blame your father. Blame Shimura Yami. He ate all your milk powder money. I'm never treating you to barbecue again. Hisashi scolded, though he sighed and got serious. We'll take a break tomorrow. The day after, we're back to missions. Yami, you're a genin, but no D-rank missions for you. Prepare yourselves. Restock your ninja tools and make sure you're in top shape. We meet at the Hokage building at 9 o'clock in 2 days. Got it. The 3 of them responded, bidding Hisashi goodbye before heading home. Yojeo watched Yami disappear into the night with a hint of determination in her gaze. Root base. Yami didn't head home. Instead, he made his way straight to the root base. He figured the old man was probably holed up here, plotting as usual. And he was right. When Yami entered, Danzo was sitting at his desk. "Old man, I'm back," Yami said, flopping down onto the couch. Danzo put down his pen and looked up. "How are your new teammates and teacher? Are you satisfied?" "They're decent," Yami nodded. "Strength-wise, they were adequate, not a burden. And as for their looks, 2 prime-age beauties were always a welcome sight." But Yami had a burning question. "Old man, the Hyuga branch family doesn't normally take on leadership roles as jonin. So why did Hisashi suddenly become my leader? And why are Yojeo and Kurane, both shinin, on my team? What happened to my previous teammates?" Danzo chuckled. And he looked rather smug about it. "This is the result of my clash for influence with Hiruzen." Danzo leaned back, closing his eye and speaking slowly, carefully choosing his words. The Hyuga clan has always been loyal to the Hokage. Hisashi of the Hyuga is formidable. Hiruzen invited him to take on this role, which aligns with my objectives as well. At the very least, your safety is assured. But don't let Hisashi's sentimental talk of the will of fire sway you. As for the two Chunin, Danzo opened his eye, a sly grin creeping onto his face. They are both talented individuals that I personally selected. They're nothing like those who are stuck at the Chunin level indefinitely. I went to great lengths to make sure they joined your team. Not only had he secured competent teammates for Yami, but he had also made a calculated move against Hiruzen. One of Yojo's teammates died, and another Gecko Hayate was recruited into Umbu by my orders. He looks weak and frail, so he won't last long. As for Kurane, she was once with Asuma. But thanks to my influence, Asuma has left Konoha and joined the 12 Guardian Ninjas. Yami, this is the power of authority. Only with power can you manipulate situations openly and achieve your goals. Even now, Danzo didn't miss a chance to instill his ideology in his grandson. Yami was speechless. This should have been a simple team assignment, but somehow Danzo turned it into a full political game. Asuma's departure and his joining the 12 Guardian Ninjas were just the tip of Danzo's schemes. It was clear that Danzo's actions were useful to him in some way. What could he even say? Honestly, the system should be following Danzo, not him. Whatever. Alright, old man. I've got a mission the day after tomorrow. Yami waved his hand dismissively before heading for the door. To be honest, Danzo seemed genuinely concerned about him. The old man had carefully selected Yami's team, and Yami already had plans for them. He couldn't do everything alone, it was time to find some useful tools. Tomorrow morning at 10, bring Kabuto from the orphanage to my place. After those words, Yami vanished into the shadows. The next morning, Yami woke up when he felt like it and made his way downstairs for breakfast. A servant approached him. Young master, a boy with white hair has been waiting at the door since early morning. No matter how much we tried to get him to come inside, he refused. Yami raised an eyebrow. He knew exactly who the servant was talking about, Yakushi Kabuto. But why was Kabuto waiting outside? Taking a sip from his porridge, Yami gestured. Bring him in. Moments later, Kabuto stood before him, looking uneasy. Why didn't you come inside? Why wait outside? Yami asked. Kabuto hesitated, speaking in a low voice. You told me to come at 10, but it isn't time yet. Yami chuckled and motioned for Kabuto to sit across from him. He signaled for the servant to bring another breakfast for him before sending them away. Now, only the two of them remained in the spacious dining room. Eat first. We'll talk afterward. With that, Yami resumed eating, ignoring Kabuto for the time being. Kabuto kept his head down, eating quietly, though unease still lingered. Since their first encounter, Yami had left a lasting impression on him. Especially that smile. It gave him chills. Dangerous. Although they were about the same age, Kabuto felt like a helpless mouse whenever they interacted. It was a deep, primal fear. Even though Yami hadn't been around much lately, that feeling only seemed to grow stronger. After finishing his meal, Yami placed his chopsticks down. Kabuto did the same. Kabuto, do you know why I called you here? Yami asked with a smile. I don't know, Kabuto replied cautiously. Then do you know about Director Nono's other identity? Yami sipped his milk, speaking casually. You're a clever kid, so don't act like you don't know. I can't stand people who try to outsmart me. Cold sweat formed on Kabuto's forehead. After a long hesitation, he whispered, Director Nono is a ninja. Correct. Yami nodded, still sipping his milk lazily. To be more precise, she's a spy for Root. During the Third Shinobi World War, she provided Konoha with vital intelligence. Kabuto's expression became serious. This was the first time he had heard of Nono's past. Do you know what Root is? Yami suddenly asked. Kabuto hesitated. Most Chunin and Genin didn't know much about Root. As an orphan, he had no reason to know either. The Ninja Academy never taught about it. Listen carefully. Yami cleared his throat. Root does what Umbu can't. Root takes on the missions Umbu won't. In other words, Root handles everything Umbu does, but even more. Act first, report later. With the Hokage's special permission. No, wait, what is the Hokage? Doesn't matter. The Hokage can't control Root. Root absorbs power and grows beyond anyone's control. Kabuto sat still, his mouth slightly open in shock. Did he just hear that right? The Hokage couldn't control Root? That sounded unbelievably arrogant. Well, do you understand now? I think I do. But, why are you telling me this? Kabuto asked, still cautious. He was just an orphan, not important in the grand scheme of things. Why would Yami share something like this with him? You don't understand, Kabuto. Yami sighed suddenly, his voice tinged with pity. Nono has wanted to leave Root for a long time. All she wants is to focus on running the orphanage. But she can't. She's an elite spy. She knows too much. You think my grandfather would let her walk away that easily? Besides, there are so many orphans in the orphanage. They need food, clothes, medicine. If Nono stops working, how will she get the money to provide for them? Kabuto's face turned pale at the thought. The image of Nono being forced into something she hated just to keep the orphanage running made his chest ache. His eyes stung. Before he realized it, tears slipped down his cheeks. But Yami's voice changed suddenly. I can give you a chance. If you become a stronger spy, if you prove you are more valuable than she is. Then tell me, what's stopping me from setting her free? At this moment, Kabuto was overwhelmed by a rush of emotions, his mind struggling to process the sheer weight of everything. He now understood why Nono would often vanish for extended periods, leaving the nurses to handle the orphanage. She was on dangerous missions. Thinking about how Nono constantly risked her life for the orphanage, Kabuto felt a tight, suffocating sensation in his chest. None of the orphans knew. None of them understood the sacrifices Nono had made for their well-being. Why me? After what felt like an eternity, Kabuto finally lifted his head, his voice strained. I'm just an ordinary orphan. Am I even worthy of being compared to Director Nono? He wasn't afraid of hardship. What he feared was falling short, being unable to rise to the occasion and dragging Nono down with him. Of course, you're not on her level yet. Yami shook his head slightly, observing Kabuto's face fall in disappointment. But I see potential in you. I believe you'll become a great intelligence ninja in the future. Then, if I become strong enough, will Director Nono be free from Root? Kabuto asked with hope. No. Yami's response was like a cold splash of water, instantly freezing Kabuto's hope. Once you're in Root, you're theirs, even in death. Yami yawned, unfazed. Leaving Root is impossible. But I can make sure Nono no longer has to go on dangerous missions. She can focus solely on managing the orphanage, remaining a reserve asset for Root instead. This is the best outcome you'll get. Don't push for more. If you want to bargain with me, you need to prove your worth first. Right now, you're not in a position to negotiate. I understand. Kabuto lowered his head, his glasses catching the light. Without hesitation, he slid off his chair and kneeled before Yami. Master Yami, I am willing to join Root and serve you. Good. You're enrolled in the Ninja Academy, right? Yes. I started last month. Attend your classes during the day. At night, report to the Root base for training. Remember, tell no one. Not even Nono. Understood. Kabuto responded without hesitation. Yami's words had imparted a crucial lesson. The value of self-worth. Only those with real value could earn the recognition they sought. Yami believed in his potential. That was his value. Now, it was up to him to transform that potential into real strength and prove that Yami had made the right choice. When that time came, Nono would be free to live the life she deserved. And the orphans would have a better future. Kabuto clenched his fists. For the first time, he had a goal. A purpose. CG, take him to familiarize himself with the base and assign him a teacher. The moment Yami finished speaking, a Barame CG emerged from the shadows. As they walked away, Kabuto and Izumi crossed paths at the entrance. Izumi glanced at Kabuto with curiosity, her large eyes filled with questions. She didn't ask, though, simply running into the house to find Yami. Yami. I came to hang out with you. You officially become a ninja, let's celebrate. At that moment, Shimura witnessed something noteworthy. As Izumi and Kabuto passed each other, the sunlight cast a shadow at the doorway. One rushed toward the light. The other walked into the darkness. The next day, after a full day of rest, Hisashi's team gathered outside the Hokage building. Once all three arrived, Hyuga Hisashi led them inside, heading straight to the mission assignment center. Konoha's missions were usually divided into two categories. Commissioned missions, these could be requested by anyone. The rewards were based on difficulty, and the village took a 20% commission as a handling fee. Village-issued missions, these paid significantly less, usually about 1/3 to 1/5 of the market rate. However, village-issued missions had an advantage: they provided contribution points. During the past Shinobi World Wars, ninja participation was driven by more than just duty. Missions were assigned based on difficulty, and the rewards reflected that. Contribution points could be exchanged for a variety of benefits. Jutsu, ninja tools, even private training sessions with high-ranking shinobi. This system, originally created by Senju Tobirama, had skyrocketed Konoha's military efficiency. Even ordinary ninjas could now have the opportunity to grow stronger. This was one reason Konoha's shinobi quality remained among the best in the 5 great nations. And Konoha's economy was the strongest of them all. "Excuse me, we'd like to take a mission." Hisashi spoke politely to the clerk. The weary clerk didn't even look up. He simply grabbed a stack of mission request forms and handed them over. "Pick one and register." Hisashi skimmed through the stack, his expression darkening. The missions listed were all: helping farmers plant rice, finding lost pets, long-distance errands. The rewards were decent, but none of these would provide any real training. "Sensei, let me take a look." Yami stepped forward from behind Kurane. Hisashi handed over the stack. Yami took one glance, then slammed the papers onto the clerk's desk with enough force to nearly break the table. The loud crash turned heads. All the surrounding shinobi and mission clients stopped to stare. "What are you doing?" the startled clerk snapped. Yami pointed at the emblem on his clothes. "I am Shimura Yami, grandson of Shimura Danzo. Think carefully before you speak to me." The clerk's expression shifted instantly. His smile appeared at lightning speed. "So, you're from the Shimura clan. My apologies, I was so busy I didn't notice. What kind of mission would you prefer?" Yami ignored him. Instead, he grabbed the entire stack of mission scrolls. "Never mind. I'll choose myself. Of course, take your time. But, some of these are quite dangerous." Yeah, I got it. I'm not looking to die." Yami waved the clerk off, then turned to his 3 stunned teammates, flashing an innocent smile. "Let's take our time and choose the right one." At that moment, all 3 thought the same thing. Being a rich second-generation kid is awesome. When you step into the world, you must carry your identity with you, but sometimes, you need to remind others of it. Yami had no desire to become like Asuma, Konoha's eldest second-generation heir, who still struggled with his lack of success. In the corner of the mission hall, Yami unfurled a pile of mission request forms and scattered them across the floor. He gestured for the others to join him and crouched down. "Come help me pick. Let's figure out which mission works best." Hisashi's expression was one of confusion. This was the first time he had ever selected a mission like this. It was a new experience. Despite being a Hyuga, and the younger brother of the clan head, he was still a member of the branch family. No one had ever gone out of their way to seek favor with him. And when a shinobi was still weak, they couldn't afford to be selective. Once they became strong enough to rise to the rank of Jonin, their status changed. By that point, they'd have no need to worry about clerks. But Shimura Yami? He was completely different. Even the Hokage's son didn't possess such audacity. Then again, he was Danzo'S grandson. Everything about him made sense now. It all felt natural. Kurane and Yojeo were at a complete loss for words. In their past teams, Jonin leaders assigned missions without a second thought. They never had a say in the matter. "This one seems interesting," Yami said, pointing at one mission. Hisashi glanced at it and immediately rejected it. "No. We can't send a child to the front lines right now." Although Konoha had signed a ceasefire with Tsunagakure, the situation with the other 3 nations remained tense. Low-intensity skirmishes and border conflicts were still common. Missions were often intercepted by ninja from rival nations. The mission Yami selected? It involved an ambush against an Iwanin team. If Hisashi actually took Yami to the battlefield, he'd be locked away in Root's underground prison before they even arrived. Oddly enough, Yojo's eyes flickered with a hint of resentment when she saw the mission. This one, Hisashi said, decisively. The three of them gathered around, checking the details of a rank assassination mission. A merchant in the Land of Fire had been smuggling grain to Iwanin. While the smuggling itself wasn't a problem, evading taxes was. The Fire Daimyo had personally issued the request. Among assassination missions, targeting civilians, especially wealthy merchants, was one of the easiest tasks. There was even extra compensation for it. Hisashi wasn't asking for much, just a little extra income for his personal savings. This way, he could ensure Niji wouldn't go hungry in the future. Alright, fine, Yami sighed, clearly disappointed. He'd hoped for a battlefield mission, a chance to form bonds with other shinobi. But it seemed that would have to wait. Kurane and Yojo showed no objections. Just as they were about to return the mission scroll, an Umbu shinobi suddenly appeared in front of them. Hyaga Hisashi, the Hokage requests your presence. Please bring your team to his office immediately. Hisashi blinked in surprise but quickly regained his composure. Understood. We'll head there now. Yami was intrigued. What could Hiruzen want with them? Handing the mission scroll to the Umbu, Hisashi led the way upstairs. At the Hokage's office, Hisashi knocked on the door lightly. Once granted permission, he entered with his team. The room was filled with smoke. Sarutobi Hiruzen sat behind his desk, leisurely puffing on his pipe. Mito Kato Homura and Yuditen Koharu, the village's elder advisors, were seated on either side of him. Hokage-sama. Elders, Hisashi greeted respectfully. Kurane and Yojo both offered slight bows. Despite having ruled Konoha for over 3 decades, these elders still held substantial authority. But Yami? He frowned. Damn it. The room is sealed, and they're smoking in here? Aren't they concerned about dying from second-hand smoke? Hisashi, good to see you, Hiruzen greeted with a warm smile. Noticing Yami's displeasure and how he was fanning the air in front of his face, Hiruzen quickly understood. He stood up and opened the window behind him. A refreshing breeze flowed in, clearing the smoke and improving the air quality. We're used to the smoke, but I should have considered that you're not, Hiruzen said, chuckling. Ding. Host has established a bond with Yuditen Koharu. Reward, 0.5 standard Jonin Chakra. Host has established a bond with Mito Kato Homura. Reward, fire release, proficiency. Yami wasn't surprised. Danzo and the elders were so closely tied that they might as well have shared a pair of pants. It made sense that they'd have some goodwill toward him. After exchanging pleasantries with the two elders, Yami turned to Hiruzen. So, what do you want, old man? Technically, Hisashi was the team leader. But this was the perfect time for him to speak. Hiruzen, ignoring Yami's tone, simply smiled. It took some time to assemble your team, didn't it? Am I not allowed to check in on you? Considering my relationship with your grandfather, you could even call me Grandpa Hiruzen. Is it so wrong for me to take an interest in the younger generation? Yami shook his head vigorously. My old man said you're a crafty fox. The bigger your smile, the more you want to screw someone over, just like right now. Silence. Hiruzen's smile faltered. Hisashi and the others were completely taken aback. In all their years, they had never seen anyone speak to the Hokage like this. Konoha simply didn't allow such behavior. Pfft. Koharu burst into laughter, quickly covering her mouth when Hiruzen shot her a death glare. Danzo really taught you everything, huh? Koharu teased. Aren't you worried about corrupting the kid? Damn you. At that moment, Hiruzen genuinely wanted to throw Koharu out of the window. What do you mean, corrupting the kid? My smile is perfectly fine, damn it. Taking a deep breath, Hiruzen decided not to engage with Yami's antics. Instead, his expression grew serious. Hisashi, I called you here because I have a special mission for you. This mission is of the utmost importance. Most of the Jonin are out of the village. Right now, you're the most suitable candidates. Hiruzen began outlining the mission. The mission was officially classified as a tentative B-rank intelligence operation, but there was potential for it to escalate to an A-rank assignment. Konoha had received intel that Kirigakure had dispatched spies to a town located along the border of the Land of Fire and the Land of Rivers. The exact objectives of the spies were still unclear. The mission's directive was to capture the target alive and return them to Konoha for interrogation by the village's intelligence department. It was categorized as a B-rank mission due to the nature of intelligence work often handled by non-combatant operatives or trained civilians, not shinobi with high combat abilities. Given the presence of 1 jonin and 3 chunin, the team was considered more than capable, with enough flexibility to adapt should complications arise. After listening to the details, Hisashi agreed without hesitation. A satisfied smile returned to Hiruzen's face. The real reason Hiruzen had handpicked Hisashi's team for this mission was to observe Yami's performance. He wanted to assess Yami's abilities and potential during an actual mission. If Yami's results met expectations, Hiruzen could intensify his efforts to draw him away from Danzo'S influence. Though the Uchiha clan had some notable talents like Uchiha Shisui and Uchiha Itachi, they were becoming more difficult to control. Yami, on the other hand, was seen as a potential asset that could restore balance to the village. But his background made him complicated, and Danzo was an even bigger obstacle than the Uchiha clan. Old man, Yami frowned. We've already accepted another mission. Why didn't you tell us about this earlier? That mission isn't important, Hiruzen said. Hisashi quickly intervened on behalf of the Hokage. It's just an assassination mission, targeting a merchant. It's something that other teams in the village can handle. Capturing the Kirigakure spy is the priority. Then what about my extra money? Yami sighed. Ever since I became a ninja, my old man doesn't even give me pocket money anymore. Meanwhile, I'm carrying thousands of explosive tags on me. I don't feel safe at all. Hiruzen paused, lifting his pipe to his lips. For a moment, his expression was filled with confusion. Thousands of explosive tags? What is he planning to do, start a war? Can we take 2 missions at once? Yami asked. The mission we accepted is in Tansho Street, which happens to be on the way. What mission did you take? Hiruzen asked. Hisashi explained the details briefly. The Hokage hesitated, looking thoughtful. There's no precedent for taking 2 missions simultaneously. He trailed off. It's just a matter of approval, Yami said dismissively. Sensei writes the report, you sign it off, and that's it. Hiruzen's advisors spoke up. It makes sense for efficiency's sake, Yoden Koharu said. It won't take much extra time, and it also saves manpower. It's a good idea. You should trust Hisashi, Mito Kato Homura added. Even though he's from the branch family, his strength speaks for itself. I agree, Koharu nodded. Their team is solid, and limiting them wouldn't make sense, especially with the village's current manpower shortage. Fine. Under the persuasion of his advisors, Hiruzen reluctantly gave his approval but issued a warning. If you fail the mission, I'll have Danzo discipline you when you return. Hisashi's mouth twitched. If you fail, you get a spanking? Connections really are everything. With 2 approval letters in hand, Hisashi's team departed from the Hokage building and headed toward the village gates. They were already geared up, so they wasted no time and prepared for departure. At the gates, the 2 gatekeepers Kamizuki Izumo and Hagane Katetsu stood watch. Though technically genin, they were on duty today as part of their assigned missions. After completing the departure paperwork, Hisashi addressed his team. Fujimoto Kaisuke, the smuggler, is currently residing on Tansho Street. It's not far from Konoha. We should arrive by afternoon if we move at full speed. The group nodded in agreement. They swiftly disappeared into the forest, leaping through the treetops. When Hisashi said full speed, he didn't mean exhausting their stamina, but rather maintaining a pace that would keep them at optimal energy in case of any emergencies. Their speed was dictated by the slowest member Kurane. She had the weakest endurance in the team. Realizing this, Kurane kept her pace steady, mindful of her stamina. She resolved to improve her taijutsu and endurance when they returned. At the very least, she wanted to increase her travel speed. Meanwhile, Yami and Yojeo seemed unaffected by the pace. In fact, Yojeo seized the opportunity to ask Yami about kenjutsu techniques during the journey. By the time they arrived at Tansho Street, Yojeo seemed unsatisfied with the conversation. Danzo had provided Yami with extensive training in swordsmanship, so his theoretical knowledge was far superior to hers. Their exchange had proven highly beneficial for Yojeo, revealing weaknesses in her technique. If it were up to her, she would have found a quiet place to train with Yami right away. But this was still a mission, and their priority was the task ahead. The team booked a hotel and gathered in Hisashi's room for a final briefing. Fujimoto Kaisuke resides in the luxury district of Tansho Street, Hisashi explained. Many wealthy merchants and nobles live there. Our mission must be carried out discreetly. We can't afford to cause a scene that would tarnish Konoha's reputation. Though Tansho Street was called a street, it was more like a bustling commercial district filled with casinos, pleasure houses, and taverns. At night, it came alive with activity, making stealth operations a challenge. We'll rest for now, Hisashi concluded. We move after midnight. After leaving Hisashi's room, Yami called out to Yojeo. Yojeo. She turned to face him, curious. What is it? Do you know someone named Uzuki Shinji? Yojeo's expression immediately darkened. Where did you hear that name? Yojeo asked, her eyes filled with concern. Is he someone close to you? Yami didn't answer directly, instead continuing to probe. Noticing Kurene's curious gaze, Yojeo quickly pulled Yami into her room, away from prying eyes. Yami. Yami, can you tell me where you learned about Uzuki Shinji? This is really important to me, Yojeo insisted once they were alone. Yami nodded. I'll tell you, but first, you need to explain your connection to him and what exactly happened. He wanted the full picture. All right, Yojeo agreed, beginning to share her story. Shinji was her uncle, her father's younger brother, and a brilliant prodigy of the Uzuki clan. By 13, he had already earned the rank of Takubutsu Jonin. However, during the Third Shinobi World War, he was reported dead in battle against Uegakuer. His body was never found, only his name listed in the casualty records. For nearly a decade, Yojeo had believed her uncle to be gone, which was why hearing his name from Yami had caused such an emotional reaction. I see. Yami muttered, mulling over the information before revealing something crucial about Shinji. He's alive and still en route. Yojeo's eyes widened in shock. Then why hasn't he returned all these years? Not even a letter. Maybe there was some kind of arrangement with my old man, Yami casually hinted at Danzo'S influence. Let me make one thing clear, Umbu and Root are separate. They don't operate under the same rules. Yojeo furrowed her brow. Isn't Root just part of Umbu? Yami sighed, realizing that Yojeo, still a rookie, didn't fully grasp the internal workings of Konoha. He took the time to explain the distinct roles of Umbu and Root. Upon learning that even the Hokage had limited influence over Root, Yojeo's expression turned serious. With Danzo holding such power, it was like he was another Hokage himself, possibly more influential in some ways. Once someone joins Root, they lose their identity. No messages, no contact with the outside world, Yami explained. Your uncle's survival is tied to Danzo. If I hadn't pushed him, he wouldn't even have shared his real name. Then, can I meet him? Yojeo asked, a hint of hope in her voice. The timing isn't right, Yami replied. I'll need to ask Danzo first. I'll let you know after that. All right. Although disappointed, Yojeo understood. She gave Yami a grateful look. Thank you, Yami. If you hadn't told me, I would have never known I still had family left. Bond with Uzuki Yojeo has reached stage 2. Reward, swordsmanship talent, good, ... Yami was surprised by how quickly the bond progressed. Usually, it took more time, but in this case, it seemed her gratitude was genuine, which made the reward feel well earned. As the night wore on, Tansho Street buzzed with the sounds of nightlife. The area had quieted down slightly, but bars and entertainment venues kept the streets alive with noise. Fortunately, the residential areas were much calmer. A signal flashed from Hisashi, and the team quickly followed his lead, jumping from the window and moving towards their target, the smuggler Fujimoto Kaisuke's residence. In assassination missions, the real challenge wasn't the kill but ensuring no one noticed anything amiss. Fortunately, that was hardly a concern for Yami's team, especially with Hisashi in charge. Byakugan. Outside the mansion's walls, Hisashi's Byakugan activated, veins bulging around his eyes as he scanned the area. While the Sharingan was undoubtedly powerful, the Byakugan was more valuable to Konoha. Its ability to gather intelligence from afar, without expending significant chakra, was unmatched. The Byakugan made its users exceptional scouts, able to gather detailed information on entire battlefields. Unlike the Sharingan, which was rare, the Byakugan was much more accessible. Inside the mansion, Hisashi quickly mapped out the area, drawing a rough layout on the ground. There are 3 people in the master bedroom on the second floor, 1 man and 2 women. 2 guards are posted at the door. 3 other bedrooms on the first floor, each with 2 people. And 2 more in the basement. He paused, focusing on one particular room near the master bedroom. This one is critical. There's a shinobi inside, a chunin from the chakra signature. And he's still awake. Our target is likely in the master bedroom, but we need to secure all rooms for identification. Hisashi looked up at Yami and the others, ready to assign roles, but when he saw Yami's chakra levels, he froze. What the hell? Staring at Yami's chakra, which was much larger than his own, Hisashi briefly wondered if his Byakugan had malfunctioned. Yami, however, wasn't concerned with that. His mind was fixated on something else. 1 man and 2 women. He muttered under his breath, clenching his fists. He was irritated. Even with all his advantages, he'd never received such treatment. And now this smug little smuggler dared to. Very good. You've already sealed your fate. What's there to discuss? Yami unsheathed his kusanagi sword, his tone sharp and menacing. The best way to ensure no one notices is to leave no survivors. I'll take care of it. Yami, hold on. This approach is too drastic. Hisashi, still recovering from the shock of Yami's overwhelming chakra, quickly grabbed his arm, his face tense with concern. We're shinobi, not executioners. There are innocent people in this house. Yami gave a cold laugh. Innocent? Anyone aiding criminals is no different from the criminals themselves. In Root, there are no such things as rules. Anyone who interferes with the mission is expendable. That's too far even for Root. Hisashi's forehead began to sweat. Yami, we're a regular shinobi team, not an underground assassination squad. If you go through with this, you'll be fine, but Yojeo, Kurane, and I will all face the consequences. You can't drag the team down with you. In that moment, Hisashi saw the dark influence of Danzo in Yami. Up until now, Yami had always seemed like a playful, slightly arrogant, but generally well-meaning young man. But now, his true nature was being revealed, a kind child who casually suggests wiping out an entire household? Impossible. Yojeo and Kurane, too, were taken aback. Why did it feel like they were the ones who would be punished when Yami was the one doing the killing? This darkness was far deeper than they'd expected. Fortunately, Yami hesitated, his expression softening slightly. All right. What's Hisashi-sensei's plan then? Seeing that he had calmed him down, Hisashi let out a sigh of relief and quickly outlined their strategy. The civilians are easy to handle. Kurane's genjutsu will put them to sleep. Yami, you'll deal with the chunin. Yojeo will finish the assassination. I'll stay outside to handle anything unexpected. It was a sound plan, utilizing the strengths of each team member. Hisashi had deliberately chosen not to directly engage in combat, allowing the younger shinobi to gain valuable experience. Neither Yami nor Yojeo had objections. But Kurane looked worried. Hisashi-sensei, most of the genjutsu I've mastered are single-target techniques. I know Narakumi no Jutsu, but I'm not very proficient at it yet. The people in the basement might not be affected. I see. Hisashi frowned, realizing he'd overlooked that detail. Then I'll. Before he could adjust the plan, Yami interrupted. I'll handle it. Yami, you can use large-scale genjutsu. Kurane was surprised. Although her genjutsu hadn't worked on him before, she knew it was because of the massive difference in their mental strength. I can't. But my summoning beast can. Yami pulled a vial of blood from his pouch, smeared it on his palm, and formed a series of seals before slamming his hand onto the ground. Kuki-yos no jutsu. A puff of white smoke filled the air. A small, pink piglet appeared before them, but unlike a regular pig, it had an elongated nose that resembled an elephant's trunk. Taper. Taper. The little piglet immediately leaped into Yami's arms, nuzzling against him affectionately, as if complaining about being summoned so late. All right, all right. I'll take you to eat your favorite octopus balls once I'm on break. Yami lifted the piglet slightly. You've gotten even fatter. Taper. Adorable. Kurene's eyes sparkled as she stepped closer, eager to get a closer look at the piglet. Yojeo didn't move, but her gaze was fixed on the creature, unable to look away. Is this the dream-eating beast? Baku. The Hyuga clan had a rich history, and along with their powerful techniques, they kept detailed records of summoning beasts. Hisashi quickly recalled the information. That's right. Baku, which Yami calls Taper after the sound it makes, is a dream eater. Yami patted the little creature and noticed Hisashi's confusion. Most dream eaters specialize in wind release, but Taper is different. Its specialty is genjutsu, particularly putting people into deep sleep instantly. Though it's still young, it's more than enough for regular people. Taper. The dream Taper proudly lifted its head and waved its small trunk. Kurene and Yojeo smiled at its endearing display. Alright, let's see how well the dream Taper works, Hisashi decided. Kurene, help out by checking for any survivors to make sure everyone is unconscious. Yes. Although a bit embarrassed to be outperformed by a summoning beast, Kurene was determined to contribute. Otherwise, she would feel invisible in this team. Taper, it's time to do your thing. Yami set the small Taper on the ground before leaping over the mansion's high wall, followed by Kurene and Yojeo. Taper. A strange sound emitted from the Taper's mouth, vibrating through the air. The sound waves passed through the mansion's walls, accurately targeting its inhabitants. With his Byakugan, Hisashi could see the results clearly. The two guards near the master bedroom collapsed immediately, falling into a deep sleep. Everyone else, except for the Chunin, also succumbed to the genjutsu. However, the dream Taper was still young. While its sound waves worked on ordinary people, the Chunin quickly sensed something was off. He sprang to his feet, alert. But Hisashi wasn't worried. Because Yami was already inside his room. Silent execution. Bang. The door exploded inward, sending dust into the air. The Chunin reacted instantly, throwing shuriken toward the entrance. The metallic clangs echoed as the shuriken were effortlessly deflected. And then Yami stepped in, blade in hand. Hello. My name is Shimura Yami. What's yours? My name is Nakamura. The Chunin responded reflexively, but froze the next moment. Realizing his mistake, he hastily began forming a hand seal. Nice to meet you, Nakamura. But I'm afraid we won't be meeting again. Reducing seal count and increasing speed were key. Just as Nakamura completed his fourth seal, a blade pierced through his back and into his heart. His eyes widened. You. It's just a simple combination of shadow clone and body flicker technique. Yami's voice was cold and detached. Nakamura's body crumpled to the floor, lifeless. Host has established a life and death bond with Nakamura. Reward, Standard Chunin Chakra Unit +1. There was still a noticeable gap between rogue ninjas and those who were properly trained in a shinobi village. Poor Nakamura, likely never having attended a ninja academy, lacked even the most basic survival instinct. When there's danger, always remain cautious. Instead of finding a secure position to defend and strategize, he rushed headfirst into attack, without a second thought. His combat instincts were severely lacking. Yami turned around, scanning the room, and found over 400,000 ryo. After stashing it away, he made his way straight to the master bedroom. The two guards at the door were still deep in slumber, unaffected even when Yami casually kicked them aside. Without hesitation, he entered and pushed the door open. Yojeo had already finished her part. She stood by the window, calmly wiping the blood from her sword. Yami didn't acknowledge her, instead focusing on the enormous bed nearly 5 meters across. Two beautiful women rested there, blissfully unaware of the events unfolding around them. A faint smile lingered on their faces, as if lost in a pleasant dream. TCH. This bastard had earned his fate. Yojeo followed Yami's gaze before shifting her attention to the bed. The moment she spotted the two half-dressed women, her face flushed a deep red. Swiftly, she used her sword to pull the blanket over them, then quickly covered Yami's eyes. Yami, don't look at things you shouldn't. You'll get a sty in your eye if you do. Yami smirked. I was just observing them critically. What do you know? Yojeo let out a heavy sigh. You're impossible. Where did you even come up with such an excuse? The thought of a certain older man lurking around the village crossed her mind. Could he have had a hand in influencing Yami? Elsewhere in Konoha, Jiraiya stumbled out of a kabuki hall, his movements unsteady. Suddenly, he sneezed, almost losing his balance. Regaining his composure, he rubbed his nose and chuckled. Heh, it must be those lovely ladies talking about me. Ah, the burden of being irresistible, he said with a wink, swaying as he hummed his way home. His off-key singing echoed through the streets, earning him a stream of annoyed mutterings from the villagers. Back at the mansion, Yojao warned Yami again, stay away from that white-haired pervert hanging around the women's bathhouse. Yami, fully aware of who she was talking about, simply nodded. After confirming the mission's success, Yojao opened the window and threw a kunao outside, signaling Hisashi and Kurenai to come in. Hisashi entered first, immediately pulling out a camera to take a photo of Fujimoto Kaisuke's body for proof of the assassination. Then, he began his search of the room. Using Byakugan, he easily uncovered all the hidden compartments and secret stashes. Hisashi had already memorized the best spots to search before even entering. In just over 10 minutes, the team had gathered all valuables in the house. We've got 1.2 million ryo in cash, plus several land deeds, Hisashi reported. We won't be able to easily cash in the deeds, so we'll give them to the village. As for the cash, we'll keep half 600,000 ryo, to be split evenly. Everyone okay with that? It was an unspoken rule among shinobi, missions often yielded extra profits, and the village usually turned a blind eye as long as they received their cut. Hisashi followed protocol, offering half to keep the higher UPS satisfied. But Kurenai frowned. I didn't contribute much to this mission, she said. I don't think I should take my share. You three can split it instead. You can't say that, Hisashi replied, shaking his head. We're a team. There's no who contributed more, it's about the group. Exactly. Yami casually grabbed the ryo from Hisashi's hands. If you don't take it, then I can't take it either. If I don't take it, Hisashi-sensei won't either. Are we supposed to take the money and report it to the third Hokage? Yami. Kurenai glared at him, irritation burning in her eyes. Her frustration was clear. If you don't know how to talk, maybe you should just keep quiet. What do you take me for? Well, just take the money then, Yami said, reaching into his pouch and pulling out 250,000 ryo, thrusting it into her hands. Hisashi's eyes widened. Yami, I said 150,000 per person. You got the math wrong. No, you did, Yami said, tossing another 250,000 per person into the mix, keeping the land deeds for himself. Let's give 200,000 to the Hokage as a sign of goodwill. Why give him more? If there's a problem, he can take it up with my father. Hisashi hesitated but didn't argue. Shinobi work was costly, and while he didn't need the extra 100,000, he couldn't decide for the others. Plus, if things went south, they had a fall guy in place. After dividing the loot, the team quickly left Fujimoto Kaisuke's mansion and returned to their hotel for the night. The next morning, everyone except Yami woke up early. Yami slept in until 10 a.m. Hisashi didn't scold him, understanding that children in their growth phase needed plenty of rest. Since the third Hokage hadn't set a strict deadline, there was no urgency. Once they left Tansho Street, their pace slowed. They camped in the wilderness for 2 nights before reaching Wildfire Town on the third day. Before entering, Hisashi gave instructions. Take off your forehead protectors. I'll use Henge no Jutsu to disguise myself as a civilian. We're investigating a spy, so we need to blend in. Since the Byakugan and Konoha forehead protectors would be obvious, this was the safer approach. Yojao and Kurenai changed out of their shinobi vests, opting for regular clothes. Yami's eyes lit up when he saw them. Without warning, he ran towards Yojao, arms wide open. Hug me. Oni-san. Before she could react, Kurenai scooped him up first, pinching his cheeks with a playful grin. What? You mean Kurenai Oni-san can't hug you too? Yami suddenly didn't mind. Looks like, he won this round.